Hey guys, tonight we're going to drop you straight into a paper-walled house, somewhere in feudal Japan. The air smells like tatami mats and smoke from a distant hearth. Outside, the bamboo rustles gently. Inside, you're awake far too early, because someone started banging a drum to mark the beginning of the workday. You stretch under your thin cotton blanket and remember two very important facts: you're not a samurai, and this isn't a movie. This is your life now. And no, you probably won't survive this, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. So feel free to drop that in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You were born into this world, and, bad news, you're not going anywhere. You're part of the heimin, the common folk, and that means you're tied to the land. Literally. Your existence is pegged firmly between the rice fields and your tiny house, with a life expectancy short enough to make a mayfly smirk. There's no such thing as moving to the city or changing careers. That would be about as realistic as applying for an internship on the moon. Feudal Japan is a place of strict hierarchy, like a social layer cake, only you're the flower at the bottom. Above you are the samurai, who wield swords and authority. Then come the artisans, merchants, monks, and finally, the emperor himself, ethereal, distant, and, frankly, about as relevant to your daily life as a cloud. You're a cog in an enormous, rice-powered machine. And like all cogs, you're expected to turn quietly and not ask too many questions. You trudge outside and bow to the morning sun, mostly because everyone else is doing it. Spirituality isn't a choice here, it's air. You breathe in Shinto and Buddhism without even realizing it. There's a little family altar inside your house, complete with rice offerings and maybe a tiny paper charm from the shrine. You don't know exactly how it works. You just know bad things happen if you forget to clean it. The floor beneath your feet is packed dirt. There's no wooden flooring unless you live in a better-off village, and even then, it's reserved for the family that owns more than one chicken. You wash your face at the communal water basin. It's cold. It's always cold. The chill snaps you awake in a way that makes caffeine seem like a joke. Your clothes are folded in the same neat pile they always are, a worn-out hemp kimono. Stiff with years of sweat and soap-root washing. You tie it with a rough sash and slide on straw sandals, which were built more for optimism than comfort. You try not to think about how many days your toes have left before frostbite becomes a real concern. Breakfast is well. Let's say it's a meditative exercise in humility. A small bowl of rice, if your harvest was good. More likely, it's millet or barley, rice being too valuable to actually eat. You chew slowly. Each grain is a whisper of survival. You sip miso soup, thin as shadow, flavored with seaweed and whatever pickled vegetable managed to not rot in the clay jar overnight, and then it's off to the fields. There's no whistle. No siren, no 9 to 5. The sun is your boss, and it's a ruthless micromanager. You join your neighbors in the endless green of rice paddies, your feet sinking into the cold, wet mud. Frogs croak. Egrets watch you like tiny, feathery landlords. Your job is to plant, weed, harvest, repeat. The tools are basic: wood, metal, and calluses. Lots of calluses. No one here has soft hands unless they're dead. As you work, you listen to the village gossip. Someone saw a fox and thinks it might have been a kami, a spirit. Someone else swears the tax collector's son married a girl with webbed toes. You don't interrupt. These aren't stories for amusement. These are truths wrapped in superstition, and you nod solemnly. It's dangerous not to believe. Occasionally, you look up at the distant hills, toward the manor house of the local lord. It's not huge, but it has tiled roofs and sliding screens. More importantly, it has samurai. The word makes your spine stiffen. They're not just warriors. They're the law, the threat, and the nightmare lurking behind every regulation. You don't even look directly at them when they pass through the village. It's said that if you make eye contact, they might take offense, and your head. But don't worry. You probably won't even see one. They have better things to do than mingle with mud-stained peasants like you. Mostly, the seasons rule your life. Spring is for planting, summer for weeding, autumn for harvesting, and winter for praying your roof doesn't cave in under snow. Your calendar is filled with festivals, matsuri, which are equal parts religious, social, and exhausting. You spend weeks preparing, painting lanterns, pounding rice cakes, and avoiding the one guy who always drinks too much sake and sings sea shanties about eels. During these festivals, you're reminded that joy still exists, brief, strange joy. You watch masked dancers, toss coins at shrines, and cheer on contestants in log-carrying contests that may or may not have spiritual meaning. But mostly, it's about surviving another year without your house burning down or your crops failing. Your family is everything. You live in a multi-generational home, grandparents, parents, siblings, and that one uncle who always smells faintly of fish. You sleep side by side on futons, sharing body heat, space, and dreams. Privacy is mythical. If you want to whisper secrets, you do it by the river, under cover of birdsong. You've learned to live with the discomfort. You itch constantly from flea bites. Your teeth are worn down from chewing tough roots. You've buried friends who caught a cold and never got better. And still, the village turns. The rice grows. The drums beat. Life stumbles forward. You carve charms from driftwood. You hang wind chimes that tinkle against the mountain breeze. You whisper prayers to the kitchen fire. You know the names of every neighbor's chicken, and which ones are cursed. Mainstream historians agree that this period, especially the Edo era, brought long stretches of peace and stability to Japan, known as the Pax Tokugawa. But historians still argue whether that peace extended beyond the upper classes. For peasants, peace could still mean starvation, taxes, and the looming shadow of violence from those above, and yet, you feel oddly proud. You belong. You have rituals. You've inherited stories and rain songs and the best way to dry persimmons without them spoiling. It's not glamorous, but it's real. You're not trying to conquer anything. You're trying to make it to next spring. The sun finally dips behind the hills. You shuffle back inside, kick off your straw sandals, and light a tiny oil lamp. Shadows dance on the walls. You eat your dinner, more soup, more barley, maybe a sweet potato if the gods were feeling generous. You listen to your grandmother chant old poems while your siblings doze, curled up like kittens. Someone snores. Someone sighs. You lie on your futon, staring up at the ceiling, and wonder what tomorrow will bring. Probably mud. Definitely more rice. Maybe a fox in the fields again, but you survived today. Somehow, as night deepens, your village exhales. The cicadas give way to crickets. A soft breeze carries the scent of ash and persimmon skins drying near the fire pit. Somewhere in the distance, a flute plays, hesitant, off-key, but gentle. You wonder who it is. Probably the same boy who carved it from river bamboo last year. He's been practicing for months. Still not great, but he tries. The elderly neighbor across the narrow footpath is telling a story again. Her voice crackles like burning pine. You can't make out every word, but you've heard the tale before: a talking carp, a foolish monk, a golden teacup pulled from a tree stump. It doesn't matter if it's true. Truth is less important than shape. Stories have to be told, or they wrinkle and vanish. A stray dog curls up under your porch, and no one shoos it away. It's an old soul, that dog. It's seen 3 generations and still limps out to meet the fishermen each morning, tail thumping once for every boat that returns. you close your eyes and try not to itch the mosquito bite on your elbow. The lamp sputters. The fire dies. You hear a frog leap into a puddle. The roof creaks with the wind's fingers, and still, the world keeps spinning, silent and slow. Tomorrow will come with the same rhythm: plant, harvest, bow, chew, pray, sleep, but tonight is just yours. You clutch the old straw doll tucked beneath your bedding. It's ugly and lopsided and stuffed with bean husks. But your mother made it when you were little. It's protection, or maybe just comfort. You fall asleep to the rhythm of breath, wind, and memories. And somewhere above your thatched roof, the stars blink quietly, watching this quiet, fleeting moment in the grand, forgetful history of the world. You wake up sore. Again, your back aches from yesterday's work in the fields, and your legs feel like someone tied rocks to them while you slept. You stretch and immediately regret it. The chill of morning sneaks in through the thin wooden walls, and your breath fogs faintly in the air. There's a hint of something cooking, boiled roots or maybe leftover millet gruel. Not enough to make your stomach rumble, just enough to remind you that it exists. You are a peasant by birth, and in feudal Japan, that's not just a job title, it's a life sentence. Your family has lived in this village for as far back as anyone remembers. You farm the land not because you chose to, but because your father did. And his father before him, and so on until the line blurs into legend. The land owns you as much as you tend to it. You don't get to leave. You don't even think about it. There's no map hanging on your wall, no dreams of distant mountains or city streets. Travel is rare, expensive, and suspicious. Unless you're part of an official procession or running from something, you stay exactly where you are, and the system is built to make sure it stays that way. See, you belong to a social class called the Namen, agricultural workers bound to the land they work. You're not technically a slave, but it's not like you're collecting vacation days either. The land is divided, and you're assigned a plot. But a large portion of everything you produce goes to the local daimyo, the regional lord. You don't get to negotiate this. The taxes are due, whether you grew enough rice or not. Each year, officials come to inspect your fields. They carry long sticks and ledger scrolls, and they poke around in your muddy paddies like nosy herons. If they decide your crop yield is too low, they won't care about the typhoon, or the sick ox, or the locusts that showed up uninvited. They'll simply raise your tax burden to encourage diligence. Historians still argue whether this pressure led to agricultural innovation or just exhaustion. You bow low when they pass. Too low, and you look suspicious. Not low enough, and you're disrespectful. It's a precise art of subservience you've been practicing since you were able to stand. One village over, someone forgot to bow to a samurai once. He disappeared. No one asked where he went. You're not allowed to carry weapons. Even knives are frowned upon unless you're using them for cooking or harvesting. Any hint that you might be capable of rebellion is squashed before it takes root. So you keep your head down and your hands dirty. Your home, if you can call it that, is a single-room structure of wood and wattle. No glass windows. Just sliding shutters you prop open in the summer and seal with paper in the winter. The roof leaks sometimes. The floor is always cold. But it's yours. Kind of. You share it with your entire family, parents, siblings, maybe a cousin who showed up one year and just stayed. Sleeping arrangements are not glamorous. Futons are rolled out at night and rolled up in the morning to make space for daily chores. Privacy is something only the dead enjoy. The kitchen is basically a clay stove with a few soot-blackened pots. The smoke from the fire curls lazily up toward the ceiling, darkening the beams over time until everything has the same soft, charcoal hue. You cook with firewood gathered from the edge of the forest. Careful never to stray too deep. Not because of wolves, but because the land isn't yours. Even the forest belongs to someone, and taking too much can earn you a beating, or worse. This morning, your younger brother is already outside sweeping the dirt yard. It's not that it needs to be clean, it's dirt, but the act of sweeping shows discipline. And in a world where your worth is tied to obedience, discipline is everything. You glance over at your mother, who's repairing a straw raincoat with hands that haven't stopped aching since she was your age. She hums an old song. You don't know all the words, but you know the tune. It's a lullaby, oddly cheerful considering it was originally written to comfort children during famines. Your father is somewhere near the irrigation ditch already. He left before dawn to make sure the water routes aren't clogged. If they are, and the village's rice paddies flood, the whole community suffers. And the officials don't care who's responsible. They'll just choose someone at random to blame. That's the trick of collective punishment. It turns neighbors into watchmen. Your older sister helps the midwife now. It's one of the few jobs besides farming available to women in the village. She returns sometimes with stories of difficult births and strange herbs she's learned to grind into tea. Once, she tried to explain the concept of ghost babies to you, souls that hover near the living, especially if the birth was complicated or the child wasn't named quickly enough. Ever since then, you leave tiny offerings of rice near doorways. Just in case, work today is more of the same, pulling weeds, reinforcing the levees, checking for pests. Your hands are never clean. They're stained permanently with soil and blisters. You tie your sleeves back with bits of twine, wrap a cloth around your forehead to keep the sweat from your eyes. And begin. There's not a lot of conversation. Just the rhythmic sound of work, tools striking earth, water sloshing between toes, the occasional cough. Someone further down the row starts singing. It's a field song, repetitive and simple, meant to set a pace. You hum along. It helps. At midday, you rest under a tree and eat from a bento-style box your mother packed. It's not fancy. Just cold rice balls with salted plum in the center, wrapped in leaves to keep them from drying out. The plum is sour enough to pucker your whole face, but it keeps you alert. There's also a slice of pickled radish. It's crunchy, sharp, and vaguely terrifying in color. A neighbor offers you a sip of barley tea from his gourd. You thank him with a bow. Sharing is sacred here, not just because it's kind, but because it's survival. No one gets through the year alone. Occasionally, rumors drift in from travelers passing through. A wandering monk, a tinker selling tin combs, a messenger from the coast. They bring strange tales, talk of western ships, of foreign weapons, of cities with tall towers and paved roads. You listen with wide eyes, but you don't repeat these stories. Dreams are dangerous. Dreams make you careless. Back home, your little brother is learning to write his name using a brush and a scrap of charcoal. It's not standard for peasants to get any education, some lords even forbid it, but your village has a temple school run by a semi-retired monk with a soft spot for stubborn children. He teaches basic literacy in exchange for rice and respect. No one calls it school, though. They just say, "We're visiting old Tetsuo," and leave it at that. Later, as the sun sets, your grandmother tells you about a time when your village tried to protest a tax increase. The story always ends with the same sigh and the same line, "They burned the rice and left us the ash." You don't ask for more details. You already know how the story goes. It always ends with someone kneeling in front of a man in armor. You've never held a sword. You've never touched one. You've only seen them worn at the waist of samurai who ride through your village like minor gods. Beautiful and terrifying. You know that even if one of those swords breaks, it'll be repaired with care. If you break, you'll be replaced with someone younger, quieter, and better at staying out of trouble, and yet, you laugh sometimes. You sit with your family and crack jokes about whose rice balls are the most lopsided. You carve little toys from leftover wood. You mimic the roosters until your baby sister squeals with laughter. There is still space for joy, if only in the cracks. This is your world. Not glamorous. Not free. But real. And every day you survive it is a quiet act of rebellion against a system designed to forget you. You would think that after a long, muddy day of planting rice or hauling bundles of firewood across uneven paths, you'd at least get the reward of a hot bath and some privacy. You would be wrong. Your body aches, your feet are sore, and your face is streaked with dried sweat, but there's no candlelit wooden tub waiting for you. This is not an onsen resort. You are not a samurai. You are a peasant with a bucket. Bathing, like everything else in your life, is communal, practical, and bound by strict custom. In your village, the bath is more of a hot watershed shared by multiple families. If you're lucky, someone's already lit a fire under the stone cauldron to warm the water. If you're not, well, time to gather some firewood and blow until your face is as red as the embers. Once the water's hot enough, though hot is generous, you take turns soaking in it. The same water, reused in careful order, youngest to oldest, or sometimes based on seniority. You scrub before entering, not after. Bathing is not about removing dirt. It's about showing respect to the shared water. If someone catches you entering without washing first, expect passive-aggressive humming and aggressively loud ladle sloshing, and by the way, this is not a private affair. There's no modesty screen. No changing room. You undress with others and act like it's completely normal. Because it is. Nobody's here to ogle, they're here to get clean and complain about their joints. You learn early on to accept the human body as just another natural thing, like trees or rocks or bowls. Inside the bathhouse, steam curls around wooden beams. The smell is somewhere between wet cedar and boiled radish. Conversations drift lazily, gossip about marriages, taxes, and that one time a monkey stole someone's lunch. Someone hums a work song. A baby cries outside. The night folds itself around the wooden walls like a blanket, and for a brief moment, the aches in your shoulders ease. Toilets, however, are another story. You're probably imagining a squat toilet. That would be fancy. What you get is a hole in the ground, technically a latrine pit, positioned downhill from the house and marked by a small bamboo fence. There's a wooden platform to balance on, and maybe a stick nearby to shoo off curious chickens. Your village maintains a rotation schedule for emptying it. It's not glamorous. It's not even bearable. But it's fertilizer, and fertilizer is life. The rich, of course, have actual privies, sometimes indoors and built with stone chutes and elaborate scooping systems. There's even a record of noblewomen using perfumed paper, a luxury that would make your entire village weep with envy. Meanwhile, you're still debating whether that leaf you found is poison ivy. Toilet paper doesn't exist, unless you count sticks, leaves, or the occasional strip of frayed cloth you'll regret using later. Some regions use smooth, flat wooden paddles called chuggi to scrape instead of wipe. You keep one hanging near the door. It's shaped like a spatula and deeply personal. You do not borrow someone else's paddle. Ever, water is precious, so hygiene is seasonal. In summer, you bathe more often because you're covered in sweat, mud, and mosquito bites. In winter, you bathe less because you'd rather smell like a scarecrow than freeze to death. If you need to wash your hands or face during the day, there's a communal basin at the village edge. It's fed by a narrow stream and shared by everyone. Someone carved a little dragonhead spout into the wood. It's charming, until you realize you're rinsing your vegetables, dishes, and feet in the same trough. To avoid illness, there are rules. You never drink from the basin. You never spit into it. You never, ever, touch it right after visiting the latrine without washing your hands first. That's not superstition. That's survival. Waterborne illness is real, and it doesn't care about how polite you are. Still, you get sick. Everyone does. Colds, fevers, boils, intestinal trouble, diarrhea is practically a seasonal event. And there are no doctors in your village. Just the midwife, the temple monk, and a handful of herbalists who treat you with crushed roots and whispered prayers. If something's really wrong, you're carted to a town 2 days away and hope for the best, the most common advice. Don't eat anything weird. But weird is relative. You once watched your cousin eat a beetle and claim it cured his hiccups. The hiccups stopped, but now he refuses to eat anything that isn't crunchy. Speaking of strange health habits, let's talk about teeth. Dentistry isn't really a thing. If you get a toothache, you just wait for the tooth to fall out. If it doesn't fall out, and the pain becomes unbearable, someone might pull it with pliers or a very enthusiastic chopstick. There's no anesthetic. There's just strong tea and the sound of your own screaming. For the upper class, there's a tradition called ohaguro, blackening the teeth using iron filings and vinegar. It's considered beautiful, mature, and a symbol of status. You try to imagine why someone would willingly coat their teeth in iron sludge and walk around smiling like a haunted ink bottle. But hey, you're wearing a robe held together with a vine rope, so maybe you're not one to judge. After your bath, you head home in the dark, guided by the moon and the familiar squelch of your sandals in wet earth. Crickets trill in the reeds. Fireflies hover like tiny floating lanterns. You pause near the family shrine on your porch. It's modest, just a wooden box with a paper charm, a bowl of old rice, and a sprig of pine. You clap twice, bow, and whisper a wish. You're not sure if the gods hear you. Maybe they're busy listening to someone higher up the social ladder. Still, you whisper anyway. It can't hurt. Inside, your family has finished dinner. They saved you a bowl of broth and a rice cake. It's lukewarm but comforting. You eat slowly while your sister hums a lullaby. She's rocking the baby in a straw cradle. The cradle squeaks with each sway, like a cricket trapped in a basket. You settle onto your futon, still damp from your bath. Your hair drips quietly onto the pillow. You think about the next day, about the weeds that need pulling, the ditch that needs clearing, the chicken that laid an egg in someone else's yard again. You think about the monk who taught you how to count using pebbles. You think about your grandmother, who swears that dreams carry messages from the river spirits. Then, as the wind rustles the walls and the dog outside shifts in its sleep, you think about how normal this all feels. How you've never known anything else. How this world, with all its discomforts, is still home. Some nights you wonder if the people who live in castles get cold too. Or if they lie awake, listening to the same wind, haunted by the same fears. You imagine them surrounded by silk screens, with lanterns casting soft shadows, and food brought in on lacquer trays. But maybe, just maybe, they feel just as small when they stare at the moon. Your father snores. Your mother whispers a prayer. The dog barks once, softly. And you, finally warm, drift into sleep again, tucked under layers of straw, memory, and tradition. The wind hums through the gaps in the walls, and the smell of cedar smoke clings to your hair like a lullaby. Sleep doesn't come all at once. First, there's the fidgeting. You shift beneath the futon, trying to find a spot where the straw doesn't poke your ribs. Your pillow is a wooden headrest wrapped in cloth, functional, yes, but it feels more like punishment than comfort. You pull your thin blanket higher and curl in tighter. Through the paper-thin walls, you hear the sound of someone sweeping. Even now. Maybe an old man fighting off his insomnia, or a young wife finishing chores before her husband wakes for the early rice checks. The rhythmic scrape of the broom against dirt has a hypnotic rhythm, like waves at low tide. A few houses down, someone's baby starts crying. The sound echoes off the clay and wood, and for a moment, you wonder if it's your little sister. But no, she's tucked beside your mother, fast asleep, her fingers curled around the edge of the blanket like a kitten clutching straw. You shift again. A mosquito whines near your ear. You slap lazily at the air, miss, then tuck your hands under the blanket in defeat. If you're lucky, the cold will keep the bugs sluggish. Just before your eyes finally give in, you hear it, a bamboo clapper in the distance. The night watchman, usually a retired soldier or someone too old to farm, walks the village paths in the dark, tapping his clappers together and calling out the hour. All is well, he says. Or maybe he's just reminding himself that it is. You like that sound. It's not music, but it feels safe. Like someone watching the shadows while you sleep, you breathe in deeply, catching a trace of smoke, pine, and warm earth, and let the world go quiet. Morning again, the rooster crows. Of course it does. That same rooster, every day, perched on the same rickety fence post like it's guarding a castle made of dirt and chickens. You groan softly and sit up, your hair stuck to your cheek with sweat. The blanket slides off, revealing your legs dotted with new mosquito bites, like some kind of itchy constellation. You stretch, yawn, and try to remember what day it is, not because it matters, but because you're secretly hoping it's a festival day. It's not, it's just a regular workday. Again, your stomach growls before you stand up. You're already hungry. You were probably hungry in your dreams. Your body is like an old cart, always rattling. Never quite full, but still rolling forward because it has no other option. You pad outside barefoot, past your mother already kneeling beside the fire pit. She's stirring a pot of millet with pickled radish water, a kind of thin porridge that fills the stomach more than it feeds it. She looks up and smiles, but you know she's been awake for hours already. Mothers don't sleep here. Not really. Breakfast is the same thing you had last night, which is also the same thing you'll probably eat again at lunch. Grains, maybe a sliver of daikon. If the weather's been kind and the tax collector hasn't been greedy, you might even get a few seaweed shreds, soft and salty and smoky from their time drying over the fire. But let's not get crazy. Most mornings, you eat just enough to stop the ache, never enough to feel truly full. Hunger becomes a quiet companion, always present, never loud. It sharpens your focus and dulls your expectations. You learn to chew slowly, as if savoring will stretch the food farther. It doesn't, but the illusion helps. You gather your tools, a straw hat for shade, a wooden hoe, and your trusty woven basket with a small crack in the handle. The crack has been there for months. You keep telling yourself you'll fix it, but other things always come first, like hauling water, mending that hole in the roof, or finding where the goats ran off to again. Work begins with weeding along the southern paddies. The sun hasn't risen high yet, but already your back is slick with sweat. Dragonflies skim over the water, and the frogs have started their usual gossip. You envy them. All they do is sit in the mud and sing. They don't pay taxes. They don't haul bundles of firewood until their hands blister. Around midday, you're invited to share a snack with one of your neighbors. A small kindness, just a triangle of cold rice wrapped in a persimmon leaf, but it tastes better than anything you've had in days. Sharing food isn't just custom, it's currency, trust, and sometimes apology. A good neighbor might share a bite of pickled plum or even a roasted chestnut. A great neighbor might give you some fish, if their cousin came back from the coast with more than they could preserve, but fish is rare. Almost mythical in your inland village. Your main protein source is usually fermented soybeans, or natto, slimy, stringy, and notoriously pungent. It smells like old socks soaked in bean broth, but you eat it anyway, because it might be the only thing your body gets that vaguely resembles protein this week. Sometimes, you hear stories about rich people who eat eel on special occasions. Or even, brace yourself, chicken. You look down at the skinny, featherless thing pecking at your sandal and try not to laugh. If you tried to eat it, it would probably just explode into dust. Most days, you and your family are functionally vegetarian, though not by choice. Meat is expensive, and Buddhist teachings, at least the ones filtered down through the monk at the temple, discourage killing. So you survive on rice, when you have it, millet, barley, pickled roots, wild greens, and miso soup so thin it might as well be seasoned water. The occasional wild yam or mushroom is cause for celebration. And cautious sniffing, because mushrooms? They're a gamble. There's a local saying, 3 mushrooms bring fortune. The 4th brings a funeral. You don't know if it's true, but you do remember that one time your uncle picked a cluster near the shrine and didn't wake up for 2 days. When he finally did, he claimed he met a fox spirit who challenged him to a riddle contest. He still can't remember his wife's name, but he can recite 17 types of knots, and yes, there's always someone who tries to raise their own animals. Chickens, ducks, maybe even a pig. But pigs eat a lot, and if there's a bad harvest, the family has to choose between feeding the animal or themselves. That's not a decision anyone wants to make. There are also wild boars in the mountains, but hunting them is dangerous, and you don't have weapons, just long sticks and a lot of bad ideas, so you go back to the field. Work. Eat. Work. Sleep. Repeat, dinner is late. After the sun has ducked behind the hills and the air starts to cool. Your mother serves a thin broth made from miso paste and turnip greens. The miso is homemade, fermented in clay jars behind the house. It smells earthy, tangy, alive. You sip it slowly. It's warm and salty and reminds you of every cold night you survived before. There's also a single grilled rice ball, toasted over the hearth until the outside is crisp and golden. It's been brushed with a smear of soy sauce. When you bite into it, you close your eyes. It's perfect. For about 7 seconds, then it's gone. Your younger brother asks if there's more. Your mother smiles and lies gently, saying the gods need their portion. Your brother nods, solemn. He's never questioned it. After dinner, your father takes a small bottle from a high shelf. He pours a few drops of homemade sake into tiny wooden cups, one for himself, one for your grandfather, one for the shrine. The sake is cloudy and sharp, made from leftover rice and hope. He drinks it slowly, his eyes staring into the flames like he's remembering something he never talks about. You're not allowed to drink yet. But sometimes, he lets you smell the cup. It smells like fire and vinegar and 1,000 years of hard decisions. That night, you dream of rice fields stretching all the way to the ocean. You walk barefoot across the paddies, the mud cool between your toes, the sky full of white cranes. You're carrying a bowl of soup that never runs out. You wake up hungry, again, and still, the days roll on. Your life is a rhythm, measured in grains, divided by seasons, sweetened by brief, quiet joys. Food isn't abundance. It's ritual. A routine. A reason to pause. And somehow, even when it's the same meal for the 6th day in a row, you still find something to be grateful for: the warmth of the fire, the closeness of your family, the way your grandmother always gives you her pickles, even when she pretends not to like you. Historians often praise the Edo period for its relative peace and agricultural innovation. They talk about land surveys, crop rotations, and regional trade networks. But historians still argue whether all that prosperity ever actually reached the peasants. From where you're sitting, cross-legged on a creaky floor, gnawing on a piece of dried burdock root, the answer feels pretty clear. But you wouldn't trade it. Not all of it. Not the laughter that bubbles up when your brother gets miso on his nose. Not the soft, rich smell of roasted barley. Not the feeling of sinking your hands into warm rice husks on a freezing day. Not even the taste of a bitter plum when you're finally hungry enough to appreciate it, because in a world built on rules, hierarchy, and silence, food is the one moment when everyone becomes equal, when every mouth, no matter how poor, deserves to be filled, even if just for a moment. Later, as your family settles into sleep, you sit outside for just a moment longer. The fire has burned down to embers, and the night is soft with mist. You cradle the empty rice bowl in your hands, feeling the warmth fade from the clay. You run your thumb along the chipped edge and think about how many meals it's held, how many winters it survived. This bowl has been passed down from your grandmother, and one day it'll probably go to your younger sister. If it doesn't break, everything you own is fragile, but somehow, it lasts. That's the trick, isn't it? Not making things stronger, just making them matter enough to be cared for. You set the bowl down gently beside the door and take one last breath of the cool, smoky air. You can hear frogs in the paddies. Someone's flute again, off in the distance. A lullaby, maybe. Or just a tired tune. Inside, your mother is already asleep, curled beside your siblings like a protective wall of breath and bone. You step quietly back into the house, pull the blanket over your legs, and close your eyes. Another day ends. Another tomorrow waits. You wake up to a different kind of sound this morning, not the rooster. Not your mother at the hearth. Not even your brother tripping over the firewood again. It's drums. Slow, deep, and distant. That can only mean one thing: someone important is coming. Or someone important has died. Either way, your plans to spend the day weeding quietly by the irrigation ditch are now extremely subject to change. You step outside into the morning light. Everything is normal and yet not. The sky is the same pale blue. The grass is damp with dew. But there's a tension in the air that makes your skin prickle, like the village itself is holding its breath. Word spreads quickly. A samurai envoy is visiting. Now, don't misunderstand. You've seen samurai before, usually from a safe distance, with your head bowed low and your mouth tightly shut. But an envoy? That's different. It means officials. Horses. Armor. Flags. Possibly a whole entourage of attendants and scribes with scrolls and strong opinions. You're told to sweep the path, straighten the boundary stones, and make sure your house looks presentable. Which is a funny thing to ask of people who live in dirt-floored huts with straw roofs, but you do your best. You press your kimono flat, wipe your face with a damp cloth, and practice bowing at the correct angle. Not too low, you're not groveling. But not too shallow, either. Or you'll be disrespectful. There's a whole science to it. Soon enough, you hear the clip-clop of hooves. Horses. Real horses. You've only ever seen oxen and donkeys in your village, and even those are usually missing patches of fur and patience. But these horses, they gleam. They prance. Their riders wear armor that clicks and shimmers in the sun. The envoy doesn't dismount. He doesn't need to. He sits tall in the saddle, hand resting on the hilt of his sword, surveying your village like it's a painting someone smudged. A hush falls, you bow, everyone bows. Even the rooster stops mid-crow. The samurai doesn't speak to you. He speaks to your village headman, who bows so low you worry he might never stand upright again. There's some quiet talking. Paper is unrolled. Something is stamped. You think you hear the words tribute increase and feel your stomach tighten. Tribute, of course, means rice. And you already have barely enough, and just like that, they're gone. They ride through your village without dusting their boots. No goodbyes. No glances back. Just the sound of hooves fading into the hills and a whisper of sandalwood and oil left in their wake. You go back to your house in silence. The tribute increase isn't official yet. But everyone knows it's coming. The headman doesn't deny it. He just sits on a log with his hands folded, staring into nothing like it's trying to apologize. So now, the season's harvest becomes more than survival, it becomes a test. You need to plant faster. Weed better. Hope harder. Because the difference between just enough and not enough is now taxes. And taxes don't care if there was a late frost or if wild boars trampled your field. Your father sharpens the sickles that night. Not because you'll need them yet, but because it makes him feel like he's doing something. You help him, even though the whetstone scrapes your nerves as much as the metal. The next day, you wake up before sunrise. You and your older sister head into the hills to forage. It's not technically allowed, you're stepping into forested land claimed by the local shrine, but everyone does it. Carefully. Quietly. You carry baskets and whisper the proper apologies to the kami who live in the trees. You promise not to take too much, you search for wild burdock root, mountain vegetables, and mushrooms you're reasonably sure won't kill you. Your sister finds a clump of ferns and digs them up with her knife, checking over her shoulder the whole time. You also find something odd, a bundle of charms tied to a branch, half-rotted and humming with unease. Someone's placed a curse warning here. You step around it. You don't touch it. You don't even look at it too long. Your sister murmurs a prayer and sprinkles salt from a pouch she always carries. You pretend not to notice your goosebumps. On the way back, you see a group of traveling monks heading along the road. They wear straw hats and carry staffs topped with iron rings that jingle as they walk. You bow as they pass. One of them smiles and gives you a blessing, his voice low and dusty like rice husks rustling in a jar. Monks are both mysterious and comforting. They live outside the world you know, above it. In a way, but they still beg for rice and carry stories from faraway temples. You once heard one speak of a city so big it takes a whole day to walk across. You can't imagine it. Your village takes 4 minutes to walk from one end to the other, and that's including a stop at the water basin. Back home, you boil the burdock root with some pickled greens and add it to a thin barley porridge. It's earthy, bitter, and smells faintly of the hillside. But it fills you. And that's enough. You go to bed sore. Your hands ache from gathering, and your knees are still damp from kneeling in the underbrush. You roll over and try to sleep, but your mind keeps repeating the same question: how are we supposed to give more when we already have nothing left to spare? The next morning, you hear something else unusual: laughter. Not the quiet chuckles of your sister teasing your brother, but full, loud, ridiculous laughter. You go outside and find your neighbor holding up what can only be described as a potato with a face. It's misshapen in a way that looks vaguely human, and he's stuck bits of charcoal in it to make eyes. The kids are in stitches. Even your usually serious uncle cracks a smile. You laugh too. Because what else can you do? In a world where the rules are rigid and the future is a spreadsheet written in rice and sweat, even a silly vegetable can become a reason to keep going. Later that week, the shrine holds a seasonal purification ritual. Everyone attends. Not because you're devout, necessarily, but because not going would mark you as strange, or ungrateful, or cursed. The ceremony involves offerings, rice, coins, sometimes fish if anyone's been lucky. There's chanting, incense, bells. You don't understand all of it, but the rhythm is soothing. The priests wave gohei, paper wands, over the crowd, and you feel the tension in your shoulders loosen slightly. Someone releases a bird, white, trembling, bewildered, and it flaps upward into the evening sky. You watch it go, jealous, and still, you return to your work. You check the water levels in the paddies. You mend a tool. You sing a song under your breath that your mother used to sing when you were small. Historians often note that during the Edo period, Japan maintained an almost feudal perfection, a stable, isolated society with a rigid hierarchy and clear roles. But historians still argue whether the peace of the samurai ever truly reached the peasants, or if it simply pressed them down more gently. You suspect the answer lies somewhere in your sore shoulders and the cold miso you had for lunch, but there's also resilience here. A quiet strength. You've learned how to bend like bamboo and grow like weeds. You've survived droughts, taxes, and spiritual mishaps involving very angry raccoon spirits. And somehow, you keep going, because this is your world, and you know it better than anyone. That night, as the fire crackles low and the shadows stretch across the tatami floor, you lie awake staring at the ceiling beams. The image of the samurai still floats behind your eyes, his armor polished, his horse snorting clouds into the morning air. He didn't look at you. Didn't need to. But somehow, you still feel the weight of his gaze. You wonder what his life is like. Whether he sleeps in silk, or if he even sleeps at all. Whether he remembers the names of the villages he visits. Whether he cares, your sister mumbles in her sleep, turning over with a soft sigh. The wind pushes against the shutters like a hand testing for weakness. You pull the blanket up to your chin and trace your fingers along the grain of the wooden floor. Tomorrow, you'll go back to the fields. Tomorrow, you'll worry about the tribute. Tomorrow, you'll fix that basket handle. But for now, you just lie still and listen to the creak of the rafters and the rustle of the bamboo fence outside, and for a brief moment, despite everything, you feel safe. Small, yes. Tired, always. But safe, and somehow, that's enough. The first storm of the season rolls in with no warning. You're in the fields when it happens, knees deep in water, sleeves rolled past your elbows, hands numb from yanking weeds. At first, it's just a few gray clouds on the horizon. Then the wind shifts, and the birds fall silent. You glance up, confused, and that's when it hits, a wall of wind and water so sudden it feels like the sky's been flipped upside down. You don't have time to run. You just hunch down and cover your head with your arms, mud sucking at your ankles while rain slaps your back like angry hands. The fields vanish into mist. You can't see your neighbor. You can't hear your sister calling. There's only wind, and rain. And the creeping fear that this storm is going to be bad, really bad. By the time you stumble back to your house, soaked to the bone, everything is chaos. The thatch roof leaks in 3 new places. The fire pit is smoldering uselessly. One of the chickens is missing. Your father is shouting instructions while trying to nail shut the shutters, and your grandmother is muttering under her breath, asking the storm Cammy what she did to deserve this, and then, just like it started, the storm ends, not with a grand finale, but with a whimper. The rain softens to a drizzle. The wind dies. A few weak rays of sun break through the clouds like they're embarrassed. The silence that follows feels loud. You step outside again and see the damage. One rice paddy has overflowed, the water breaching the embankment and spilling into the path. The communal storehouse roof has caved in on one side. A section of the bamboo fence near the shrine has been flattened. The shrine itself, still standing, but the paper charms are shredded and clinging to the posts like wet leaves. Storms are a fact of life. Especially in late spring and early summer, when the tsuyu, or rainy season, soaks everything for weeks on end. You've learned to live with it. But this storm, this one feels like a warning. The kind the old women talk about in that low, worried tone usually reserved for fox spirits and bad dreams, and now, there's work to be done. Always, you and your siblings spend the next few days helping rebuild what you can. You help haul wet rice stalks back into the paddies. You dig new drainage trenches by hand. You climb onto the roof with your uncle and awkwardly try to wedge bundles of straw into the gaps, praying you don't fall through. The days blur together into a wet, aching rhythm, but something's changed. The storm didn't just damage the village, it shifted something. People speak in lower voices. The village headman walks with a crease between his eyebrows that wasn't there before. There's talk of mold. Of mildew. Of crops that won't dry in time. The old men sit in front of the storehouse, chewing bitter leaves and shaking their heads. No one says the word famine, but everyone thinks it. You feel it in your bones. Your mother starts saving even the smallest scraps of food. Pickle brine. Burnt grains. The crusts from the bottom of the pot. Nothing is wasted now. Even the mice are nervous. They've stopped sneaking into the grain bags and instead scurry between rafters like tiny spies. One evening, your grandmother calls you over. She hands you a little woven charm. It's made from rice straw, twisted into a spiral and tied with red thread. Hang this near the door, she says, to keep the rot away. You want to ask if she really believes it will work, but then you see her eyes, tired, clouded, and serious. So you nod and hang it carefully beside the entrance. It smells like old festivals and something older still. At the temple, the monk leads a special ceremony for weather protection. He burns incense until the air chokes with it, and he chants a sutra that goes on for so long your legs fall asleep while kneeling. You sneak glances at the offering tray. Someone left a dried fish, a sweet bean cake, and a single, perfect peach. You haven't seen a peach in months. You wonder if the gods will notice. After the ceremony, people linger. They don't want to go home. There's something comforting about being near other people when the world feels unstable. Someone starts telling a ghost story about a drowned farmer who haunts a certain flooded field. Your sister rolls her eyes, but you notice she doesn't step near the irrigation ditch on the walk back. The days go on. The storm damage begins to fade, visibly, at least, but the real damage isn't in the roofs or the flooded paths. It's in the fields. The rice is supposed to be strong by now, tall, green, full of promise. Instead, it looks thin. Pale. Like it's been scared. You hear someone mutter the phrase lean harvest and your stomach twists. That's code. It means, we might not have enough. It means, people will go hungry. And in a society where most people are already one bad season away from disaster, that kind of talk spreads like mold on wet rice. One family near the edge of the village starts acting differently. They stop attending communal meals. Their house goes dark at night. Rumors say they've been saving all their food, hoarding it, refusing to share. Someone claims they heard a baby crying, but no one in that house has a baby. You're told not to ask questions. So you don't. Your father starts traveling more frequently, to neighboring villages, looking for extra grain, spare tools, even news. He comes back with stories of other places hit worse than yours. A town where the fields turned to sludge. Another where lightning struck the granary. Someone he met swore they saw a badger walking upright like a man, which is usually a sign that the local spirits are angry. Historians still argue whether peasant superstitions helped people survive by strengthening community bonds, or whether they were just the side effects of desperation. Either way, you know this: when the wind howls at night, you don't whistle back. Just in case, to lift spirits, the shrine organizes a small lantern festival. Not the grand kind with music and street food, but something modest. Families hang paper lanterns along the paths, painted with wishes and prayers. You help your sister make one. You draw a tiny rice plant and write, "May the stalks be heavy." At dusk, the lanterns glow like stars come down to visit. People smile, just a little. You catch the scent of grilled mochi on the air, someone celebrating a birthday. Apparently. You don't know who, but you silently thank them for the smell. For one night, you almost forget, and then comes the audit. It's been 3 months since the storm, and the daimyo's tax collectors have arrived to inspect the fields and determine how much tribute the village will owe. You watch them wade into the paddies, measuring stalks, scribbling on scrolls, tapping their abacuses with little clicking sounds. They wear robes that have never seen mud. Their sandals don't sink. They talk to each other in low voices, occasionally glancing at your family's field. You stand perfectly still, you don't speak. You don't blink too loudly. You pretend to be invisible. The verdict comes the next day. The tax stays the same, not reduced, despite the storm. Not adjusted, despite the weak harvest. The same. Because, they say, the samurai do not eat weather. The headman bows. He bows again. He says he understands. He does not. You go home and help your mother divide the last jar of pickled plums into smaller pots. She adds extra brine to stretch the flavor. You don't complain. You just eat what you're given and pretend your stomach isn't shrinking. That night, you overhear your parents whispering. Your mother wants to ask the monk for help. Your father says the monk can't feed everyone. Your mother says maybe he knows someone. Your father doesn't answer. He just stares at the wall until the fire goes out. The next day, you find a sparrow caught in a fishing trap by the river. It's injured, struggling. You cup it gently in your hands and carry it home. Your little sister begs to keep it. Your mother agrees, even though you don't have enough rice for yourselves, let alone a bird. But still, you feed it a few grains, and it flutters weakly in its basket. A small, desperate thing refusing to die, and somehow, that makes you feel better. There are still small joys. A neighbor brings over a gourd of roasted barley tea and says nothing, just leaves it on your doorstep with a nod. Your uncle tells a joke so bad you cry laughing. Your grandmother braids your sister's hair and hums the song she always sings during hard years, and still, the rice grows, slowly, cautiously, as if the earth itself is holding its breath. The harvest arrives late, not so late that it's catastrophic, but late enough that everyone is nervous. The air has a sharp edge to it now, crisp and restless. Autumn colors creep into the trees, and the wind carries the scent of drying leaves, wood smoke, and uneaten hopes. You walk the paddies with your father, testing the rice by hand. He rubs a grain between his thumb and forefinger, examining the husk like it might confess something. Then he nods, slowly, heavily, and says it's time, so you gather your sickle, strap your basket to your back, and wade into the fields. Harvest is backbreaking work. It always is. You bend at the waist for hours, slicing the stalks in tight bunches. Careful not to tear or waste a single strand. Each cut is rhythmic, methodical. Slice. Gather. Tie. Then repeat. The mud pulls at your legs. Your back starts to scream around midday. By late afternoon, your fingers are trembling, and your shirt is soaked through with sweat, but you don't stop. You can't. Every stalk matters. Every grain might be the difference between getting through the winter and hoping someone else does. Children help too, though mostly by tripping over things and being gently shooed away. The old folks stay near the edges of the field, tying bundles, watching the horizon, telling quiet stories to keep their hands from shaking. There's a kind of beauty to it, a communal rhythm. Everyone moving together like a slow machine powered by dirt and patience. At night, the entire village smells like chaff and rice smoke. You fall asleep with aching muscles and bruised knees, but also with a strange kind of peace. For the first time in months, you're doing something hopeful. Tangible. You're harvesting rice, and that means you made it through another cycle. Barely, but still, the village sets aside tribute rice first. Before you can store what you've reaped, before you can eat a single bowl, the headman and his assistants gather the required portion. It's weighed, bagged, tied with straw, and stacked in the storehouse like a solemn offering. No one speaks during this part. It's like a funeral for food you'll never taste, and once again, the best rice goes up the hill, to people who will never stand in your field or feel the blisters on your palms. You try not to feel bitter. You try to remind yourself that this is the way it's always been. But sometimes, it's hard. The remaining rice is carefully dried, stored, and guarded. Literally guarded. 2 elderly men take turns sleeping in the storehouse with spears by the door. Not because they expect thieves from other villages, but because desperate years can twist even good people into hungry shadows. Your family gets its share. Not as much as you hoped, but more than you feared. Enough to fill a few big clay jars. Enough to get through the winter, probably, if no one gets sick, if nothing breaks, if the gods are feeling generous. There's a small celebration. Just a quiet one. People gather at the shrine. A few sing songs. A child dances with a paper mask. There's no feast. Not this year. But someone shares dried persimmons, and your mother roasts sweet potatoes in the fire pit, and for one fleeting moment, you feel something close to joy. It tastes like smoke and sugar and possibility. The days grow shorter. The nights longer. Cold seeps into the cracks in your walls, into the space between your fingers. Into your bones. You start wearing layers again. Your mother layers the futons with old straw mats. Your sister lines her sandals with moss. Everything is about keeping in heat, food, hope, and then. The rats come, of course they do, they always do, when the rice is stored and the nights are quiet. You wake one morning to find tiny footprints in the ashes near the hearth. Your father finds a hole in one of the jars. He curses softly, rare for him, and sets a trap using pickled radish as bait. By sundown, he's caught two. He hangs them by the tail from a string near the gate. Not as a warning. Just because he doesn't know what else to do, you hate the rats. Not because they're disgusting, though they are, but because they're clever. Fast. Unrepentant. They take what they want, and no amount of prayers or traps or swearing seems to stop them. One night, you see one run across the rafter while you're lying in bed. You pretend not to notice. You pull the blanket tighter and try not to dream of tiny, chewing mouths, but then something unexpected happens. A traveling merchant arrives. It's late in the season for merchants. Most don't bother once the harvest is over and the roads start to ice. But this one shows up with a cart full of odds and ends, cloth scraps, salted fish, cheap trinkets, and stories. Lots of stories. He's missing 2 fingers and walks with a limp, but his voice is smooth as oiled paper. He sets up near the well and starts telling tales. About a boy who became a dragon. About a woman who married a fox. About a rice grain that sang lullabies at night. You sit there, half listening, half hypnotized, and for a while, the cold doesn't seem so sharp. Your little brother trades a handful of chestnuts for a bamboo flute. Your older sister buys a scrap of indigo cloth to sew into a sash. You, of course, have nothing to trade, but the merchant catches you staring at a little wooden comb, plain, worn, but polished smooth, and says, "For you. One story. Your best one." You blink. You're not a storyteller, but you try. You tell him about the rice harvest. The rats. The storm. The sparrow in the basket. He listens, nods once, and hands you the comb. Later, you comb your hair by firelight, feeling the smooth teeth slide through the knots. It's just wood. Just an object. But for some reason, it makes you feel noticed. The next day, he's gone, just tracks in the frost and a burnt-out fire pit where his cart had been. You don't see another traveler for months. Winter settles in fully, the snow starts gently, then piles higher and higher until the paths vanish and the world becomes hushed. The village moves slower. People stay indoors. Meals get simpler. Rice porridge with pickled plum. Roasted roots. Hot water with miso stirred in just enough to pretend it's soup. You find yourself sleeping more. Your body seems to fold into itself like it's trying to hide. You wake in the dark. You eat in the dark. You listen to the wind whistle through the eaves and wonder how long it will last this time. Sometimes. You sit near the fire with your grandmother. She's barely 5 feet tall but feels bigger in the dark. She tells you old things. About a fox that disguised itself as a lantern to lure travelers into ponds. About a man who swallowed the moon and couldn't stop glowing. About the time the village ran out of salt and had to trade 6 chickens for a single handful. You ask if the stories are true. She shrugs and says, "Does it matter?" She has a point. You knit straw sandals with your sister. You help your father patch the walls with mud and cloth. You scrape ash from the hearth. You chase the rats, again. You live, and one day, not long after the new year, you wake to birdsong. Real birdsong, not the scratchy caw of crows, but the light, tremulous whistle of sparrows returning to the thawing trees. The air smells different. The wind carries warmth instead of warning. You step outside and see the first shoots of grass poking through the snowmelt. Somewhere, water is dripping. You smile, not because winter is over, it's not really, but because something else is starting. A new cycle. A new gamble, and this time, maybe, just maybe, the odds will lean your way. Spring doesn't announce itself with trumpets or temple bells, it creeps in. Quietly. Carefully. Like a guest unsure if it's welcome, you notice it first in the air. That barely there softness that brushes against your cheek as you step outside in the early morning, arms still hugging your sides against the cold. Then it's the smell, damp earth, old bark, and something sweet and shy beneath it all. Plum blossoms. One day, your mother sends you to fetch water, and the entire plum tree by the temple has erupted in white. Not loud like cherry blossoms, not extravagant. Just simple, clean blooms. You stop and stare longer than you mean to. The petals look like rice paper, like something too delicate for this muddy world. One floats down and lands on your sleeve. You don't brush it off. Life, little by little, stirs back into motion, the snow recedes. The paddies, which have been empty and cracked for months, begin to fill again. The frogs return, loud, confident, endless. You hear them singing each night, a rumbling chorus from the water. Their joy is absurdly contagious, work picks up fast. There's no easing into spring. The fields demand attention like a toddler with a stick, relentless and slightly dangerous. The adults hold long meetings near the storehouse, arguing about planting times, water rotations, and compost. Your father scratches charts into the dirt with a stick while your uncle squints and mutters about the moon being too arrogant this year. You start helping with seedling preparation. It's tedious work, cleaning trays, arranging soil, sorting rice grains into neat lines. Your hands get numb with cold water, but there's satisfaction in it. The rhythm. The smell of wet earth. The feeling of potential packed into every tiny grain, and speaking of potential, the matchmaker is back. She arrives with her sleeves trailing behind her and a little wooden notebook filled with names and ages. You're not surprised. Spring always brings weddings, and weddings mean negotiations, alliances, and careful gossip. You're not on the list, yet. But your cousin is, and she's panicking. You find her sitting by the stream, clutching her knees and chewing on a reed. She whispers about a boy from the next village. He has nice eyebrows, apparently, but smells like pickled radish and always talks about fish. Worse things have happened, you say. She nods, unconvinced. You remind her that marriage is like planting rice. You never really know how it'll turn out until it's too late to do anything about it. She throws the reed at you. Back home, your mother is fermenting bean paste again. The entire house smells like a forgotten cellar. But she hums while she stirs, so you know it's going well. Fermentation is sacred here. It turns the simple into the powerful. Soybeans become miso. Rice becomes sake. Time becomes flavor, and time, always, keeps moving. One afternoon, while repairing a fence post, you see something unexpected, a man dressed in bright silks, standing near the forest edge. He's clearly from the capital, his sandals are too clean, and his expression too bored. He's accompanied by two scribes and a servant holding a paper umbrella even though the sky is perfectly clear. He's a land surveyor, he's here for the census. Every so many years, the shogunate sends men like this to walk the land, count people, verify borders, and remind everyone that yes, the government still exists beyond your rice fields. You're instructed to line up with the rest of the villagers. The surveyor asks your name, age, and occupation while one of the scribes scribbles furiously. Then he asks how much rice your household produced last year. Your father hesitates, just for a moment. But the surveyor's eyes are sharp. Too sharp for someone with that clean of a kimono. Afterward, your father is quiet for the rest of the day. You don't ask why. You already know. The surveyor leaves by sunset. Just another shadow passing over the hills, spring deepens, the festival of planting is announced. It's small this year, too many lean seasons have dulled the appetite for celebration, but still, people show up. There's drumming, of course. A local dancer performs in a makeshift fox mask, her movements sharp and twitchy like the spirit she's trying to embody. You recognize her, it's your cousin, the one who was terrified of the fish boy. She looks free. For a moment, you forget everything else and clap along with the rhythm. Afterward, the dancer vanishes into the shrine to rest, and the villagers begin the ceremonial first planting. A single patch of rice is sown by hand while the elder priest chants something low and ancient. You bow your head with the rest. Later, back home, you share a celebratory bowl of sakura rice, white grains dyed faint pink with salted cherry blossoms. It's slightly floral, slightly sour, and entirely magical. A reminder that food is still joy, even now, but then, just when things seem to be settling into place. A letter arrives. It's not for you. It's not for anyone in your house. It's for your neighbor, a quiet man with a limp and a cough that's gotten worse over the winter. The letter is stamped with the shogunate seal. He opens it, reads it, and says nothing. The next morning, he leaves. No one asks where he's going. Not aloud, but you've heard of forced labor summons. The kind where men are called to work on distant projects, roads, castles, canals. Sometimes they return. Sometimes they don't. Your mother whispers a prayer for him as she stirs the morning porridge. You look at your hands. You think about how many people this country needs to run smoothly. How many backs must bend. How many names are written on scrolls in rooms you'll never see. You think about how very far away the capital is. How high its towers must rise. How clean its floors must be, and then you go back to the fields. Because the seedlings won't plant themselves, you work from dawn to dusk, mud splashing up to your thighs, back bent at the same angle as your neighbors. The planting takes days, weeks, really, and every moment matters. One missed row, one poor plot, and the harvest will suffer. You feel the sun on your neck. The sting of insects. The pulse in your fingers. This is not glamorous work, but it is real. Each evening, your family eats together in tired silence. Miso soup, steamed greens, maybe a pickled egg if you're lucky. And then you sleep. Hard. The kind of sleep that feels like sinking. Like vanishing. Like starting over, and somewhere in the middle of it all, you realize something. You're not a child anymore. No one says it. There's no ceremony. No announcement. But it happens all the same. Your hands are stronger. Your voice steadier. You're trusted to carry water alone, to speak with the headman, to help younger siblings with their chores. Your mother asks your opinion. Your father calls you reliable. Even your grandmother starts handing you tasks without explaining them, because she knows you'll figure it out, and maybe you do. One night, while fetching firewood, you hear something behind the trees. A rustling. A snap, you freeze, then you see it, a deer. Small, brown, trembling. It looks at you. You look back. Neither of you moves, then it turns and disappears into the brush. The next morning, you tell your grandmother, and she nods knowingly. An omen, she says. You ask, good or bad? She shrugs. Depends what you were thinking when you saw it. You were thinking about dinner, if you're honest, but also about how fleeting peace can be. You're not afraid. Not really. But you are aware now of how easily things change. One letter. One storm. One crack in a jar. Life, here, is balance. And you are always dancing at the edge of it. Still, the season ends well. The rice seedlings take root. The frogs sing. The fields shimmer under the moonlight, and for now, that's enough. A few nights later, you wake to silence. not the uneasy kind, like before a storm, but true, velvet silence. The frogs have paused. The wind has stilled. Even the house creaks less than usual. You sit up slowly, blanket tangled around your legs, and look out the window. The moon is out, round, glowing faintly behind a patch of thin clouds. Everything outside is silver. The patties reflect the sky like mirrors. You can't hear a single human voice, it's peaceful. Strangely so, you think about all the hands that shaped this moment, the ones who planted, who weeded, who fed and prayed and stumbled through winters and blisters to get here. Including yours. It hits you then, quietly, that you belong here. Not just as someone surviving day to day, but as someone woven into the fabric of it. The fields, the house, the seasons, they know your name now, even if no one writes it on a scroll. You lie back down, the blanket warm against your shoulders. Tomorrow will be work. Of course it will, but tonight, for this sliver of time under the pale moon, it's okay just to rest. Just to breathe, just to be. The rainy season returns with a sly grin. You're ready this time, or at least you think you are. The roof has been patched. The trenches cleared. The pickled radish jars sealed and buried to ferment properly in the cool soil behind the house. Still, when the first heavy drops strike the roof in the middle of the night, they sound like footsteps. Bold. Uninvited. Unapologetic. You lie there in the dark, listening. The rainy season, or tsuyu, isn't a storm. It's a long, damp sigh that settles over everything. The air turns thick and clingy. Laundry takes days to dry. Floors grow slippery with condensation. Even your wooden sandals feel like they're swelling in protest. The rice fields. On the other hand, love it, every morning, you trudge out to check the paddies, and every morning, they seem a little fuller, a little greener. The water shimmers under the gray sky, and frogs scatter at your approach. Tadpoles swirl between your toes. The plants sway in the breeze like they're dancing slowly to some song only they can hear. You spend the days tending the edges of the field, patching breaks in the dikes, pulling out stubborn weeds. Weeding in the rain is a special kind of misery. The mud clings like guilt. Your back aches. Your hat drips into your collar. But you keep going, because this is the price of rice. The world shrinks during this season. Everything outside becomes unreachable, roads turn to sludge. Streams overflow, and distant hills vanish behind curtains of fog. The village becomes its own little universe. You stop thinking about the capital, or what the shogun is doing, or whether the samurai have new armor this year. None of that matters when you're ankle deep in a flooded lane, chasing a runaway sandal. Inside the house, your family moves around each other carefully. Everyone is slightly damp, slightly irritable. Your grandmother adds mugwort to the incense, swearing it keeps the mold from growing in the corners. Your sister refuses to open the windows even though the air smells like pickled socks. Your mother hums quietly while folding endless layers of wet cloth. One afternoon, the river rises too high. You're called out with the rest of the village to reinforce the bank with woven grass mats, stones, anything you can carry. The water is fast and brown and foaming. You see it pull a whole branch under like it's nothing. You throw down bundles, stomp them into place, then help your neighbor wedge another stone into the bank. No one talks much. Everyone is soaked. Everyone is afraid to say what they're thinking. If the river breaks, the fields are gone. It holds, barely. That night, the headman offers a silent prayer at the shrine and leaves a bowl of rice on the altar. No one touches it, not even the crows. Amid the gloom, there are small mercies. You're given a break from the fields to help your aunt prepare dried persimmons. The fruit is peeled and hung from strings under the eaves, each one plump and golden orange like a tiny sun. You slice and hang them carefully, fingers sticky with sweetness, eyes stinging from the smoke curling up from the cooking fire. It's messy work, but it smells like memory, like autumn, like sweetness, like something safe and soft. Your uncle teases you for slicing them too thin. you'll make them vanish, he says, and you roll your eyes. You don't mind the teasing. It makes the rain feel less heavy. Another day. The village boys put on a shadow puppet show in one of the storerooms, using oiled paper and fishbone frames. The story is about a giant catfish who wants to marry the moon. It doesn't make much sense, but the audience laughs anyway. You laugh, too. Not because the story is funny, but because it feels good to laugh. Laughter cuts through the humidity like a blade, and then the sickness comes, not a plague. Not an epidemic. Just a slow, creeping cough that finds the oldest and the youngest and settles into their chests like a heavy rock. Your little brother gets it first. Then your neighbor's daughter. Then your grandmother. You brew ginger tea, pound herbs, boil water with pine needles. Your mother murmurs instructions while pressing warm cloths to fevered foreheads. Your father fetches the monk brings incense and prayers and a tiny bell that jingles softly as he walks from house to house. It's not enough. One morning, your neighbor's house is silent. By dusk, the temple bell rings twice. The funeral is simple. It always is. A small procession. Incense. A wooden tablet placed gently on the altar. No one says much. No one needs to. The rain does all the talking. Historians still argue whether death in peasant villages was treated with stoicism or suppressed grief, but you know this. In silence, everything is louder. Your brother gets better. Your grandmother does not. She begins forgetting things. First, where she put her sewing needle. Then your name. Then what season it is. Some days, she stares out the window like she's listening to something far away. She starts talking to your grandfather, who died before you were born. Your mother doesn't cry. She just adds another futon to the corner of the room and says, "Let her be near the fire." You light the fire every morning now. Not because it's cold, but because the sound of crackling wood keeps her calm. One evening, she takes your hand, squeezes it, and whispers, "Don't forget to eat the first plum blossom." You promise, even though you don't know what she means. The rain begins to lift, not all at once. It still clings to the edges of the village, dripping from trees, pooling in quiet corners. But the sky is brighter. The paths are firmer. The laundry starts to dry in less than 3 days. Your mother unseals one of the rice jars and begins preparing half-summer congee, rice boiled until soft, with wild greens folded in and just a splash of soy. It's not fancy. But it tastes like recovery. You walk to the edge of the paddies and watch the rice sway. It's strong. Tall. Alive, and in the moment, so are you. Soon, there will be a mid-season festival. A blessing of the water. A night where people light paper lanterns and float them in the streams to thank the kami and remember those who left too early. But for now, the sun breaks through the clouds, and you just stand there, barefoot, mud squelching between your toes, staring at the bright blue sky like you've never seen it before. Because maybe you haven't, not quite like this. That night, after the first dry sunset in weeks, your sister convinces you to walk down to the river with her. Just the two of you. No chores, no baskets, no errands, just walking. The path is still slippery, but manageable. The air smells cleaner than it has in days, rinsed, almost. You both stop by the wooden bridge and lean over, watching the water swirl beneath. The river is calmer now, moving with a sleepy kind of grace. It almost looks like it's forgotten the violence it held just days ago. She asks if you think the crops will make it. You say yes, because someone has to say it out loud. She nods but doesn't look convinced. Then she tells you she's been having dreams. The kind where people talk, but you can't hear them. Where the moon disappears and comes back upside down. She says maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just the mold. Or maybe the spirits are trying to say something. You don't laugh. You just listen. The frogs are back, chirping quietly now, like they're tuning their voices after a long rest. Fireflies blink lazily between reeds. You hadn't realized how much you missed them. On the way back, your sister slips her arm through yours. Just for a few steps. Just long enough to remind you that this is your life. Strange. Muddy. Heavy at times. But full. Connected. Held together by people who walk the same slippery path you do. When you reach the house, the door is open and the fire is still burning. Your grandmother is asleep, breathing slow and shallow. Your mother is stirring something in a pot. Your brother is curled up with a bamboo fan resting on his forehead. You step inside, shake off your sandals, and sit down in the quiet. Your sister joins you. Neither of you speaks. The fire pops once. The rain drips once more from the eaves and then stops for good. Tomorrow will be another day of work. Maybe planting beans. Maybe weaving rope. Maybe chasing rats again, but tonight, there is peace, a rare, gentle kind, the kind you don't question, the kind you carry with you, carefully, into whatever the next storm may bring. The summer heat doesn't arrive so much as it settles in, like an unwelcome guest who drops their bag on your clean floor and immediately stretches out on the only cushion. It wraps around you in heavy folds, thick, damp, and slow. The kind of heat that makes every movement feel exaggerated, like you're wading through syrup. You wake earlier just to get chores done before the worst of it hits. The sun rises cruelly fast. You're barely through rinsing your face before it starts pressing against your back like a hot hand. By mid-morning, your clothes stick to you, your sandals squish, and even your thoughts feel soggy. Still, the fields need you. The rice is tall now, taller than your waist in most places, and the paddies are alive with frogs, dragonflies, and the occasional startled heron. Wading through them is like walking through a warm soup full of invisible creatures. You develop a sixth sense for where the eels like to hide. Your hands are stained from algae and sun, your legs crisscrossed with leech bites. But it's fine. You've grown used to being a creature of the wet. Some days you're lucky enough to help irrigate, clearing the wooden sluices, making sure the water flows in the right directions. It feels vaguely like doing magic. You open a gate, and water rushes in like it's been waiting for you all along. Sometimes, you talk to the water. You're not the only one who does. The adults don't say much this time of year. Everyone moves slower, saves energy. Conversations happen in half-sentences, gestures, long silences broken only by the occasional exasperated sigh when a tool splinters or a pot cracks in the heat. Your mother starts keeping wet cloths near the hearth to drape over necks. Your father refuses to wear a hat no matter how red his ears get. The village prepares for Oban, the festival of the dead. It's the one time of year when everyone, even the most skeptical, leaves offerings. You help clean the family altar. It's a simple wooden shelf in the corner of your house, with faded incense bowls, a chipped sake cup, and the names of your ancestors written on yellowing strips of paper. You dust everything, light a fresh stick, and pour clear water into a little bowl. Your grandmother sits beside you and murmurs a few lines of a prayer, her voice raspy but steady. Then she asks if you remember your cousin who died young. You don't. You were just a baby. But she tells you about her anyway. About the way she used to hum to herself while folding clothes. How she had a mole near her eye shaped like a comma. How she always shared her snacks. You nod. You listen. And for a moment, you feel like you do remember. Oban is both solemn and playful. There's a small lantern procession the night it begins. You carry one yourself. A simple square made of oiled paper stretched over a bamboo frame, with your family crest painted on each side. Inside, a single candle flickers like it's trying not to wake the dead too loudly. You walk with the others through the village and down to the river, where the lanterns are set afloat, each one carrying the spirit of someone no longer here. The river glows like a starry path, and even the frogs seem to hush for a while. You see your cousin's lantern. You don't know how you know it's hers, but you do. The next day, the village holds a small dance. You're not good at it, your feet never seem to land quite where they should, but you try. That's all that matters, really. People laugh, clap along. Someone brings out a sweet rice dumpling with a single candied chestnut on top. You share it with your sister. She takes the chestnut. You let her, it's too hot to argue. A few days later, a traveling monk arrives. He's gaunt, sunburned, and wears his robes loose and dusty. His staff clinks with tiny bells that warn small animals out of his path. He accepts water, sits in the shade of your home, and offers to recite prayers for the ancestors in exchange for rice. Your father gives him a bowl. He finishes it in 3 bites, then chants quietly for nearly an hour. His voice is thin but clear. You don't understand most of the words, but they feel old, like river stones. Worn smooth by time, before he leaves, he touches your shoulder. Keep your heart soft, he says. Hard ones break too easily. And just like that, he's gone. The heat worsens. You spend afternoons in the shade of the trees, weaving grass mats or mending broken tools. Sometimes, the older children lead the younger ones in river games, splashing and racing from stone to stone. You join when you can, though most of your time is still claimed by the fields. Your feet toughen. Your shoulders brown. You don't complain anymore, but you do start dreaming strangely, not bad dreams, not really, just odd. In one, you're pulling rice from the mud, only to find it's turned into strands of hair. In another, the sky is full of fish, swimming through clouds. You mention it to your grandmother, who nods like this is the most normal thing she's heard all week. Sometimes the spirits get talkative in the heat, she says. You believe her. One day, there's an incident. A boy from another village, young, maybe 11, shows up near your paddies, half-starved, trembling, and with a crude cut across his arm. No one knows where he came from. He won't speak. Just stares at the ground and flinches when people move too quickly. You bring him a bowl of barley porridge. He doesn't say thank you, but he eats. That night, your parents argue quietly behind the sliding screen. Your father wants to send word to the nearby villages. Your mother says it's not safe. Eventually, the headman decides to shelter him until someone comes asking. No one does. A week later, the boy vanishes. Just gone. His bowl left near the well, rinsed clean. No footprints. No trail. Some people say he was a ghost. Others say he was a thief. You just hope he found what he was looking for. As the rice ripens, the air changes again. Still hot, yes, but different. The light takes on that golden hue that makes the world look painted. The breeze returns, not cool, but kind. The dragonflies are fewer now. The frogs quieter. Your family prepares for harvest. Again, this time, you're not nervous. You're practiced. You know what to expect. You've survived a year of rice. And that means something. On the final night before the cutting begins, you walk to the top of the small hill behind the shrine. From there, you can see all the fields, stretching out like a patchwork quilt, green and gold and humming with life. You sit on a flat stone and rest your chin on your knees. The sky is clear. The moon is rising. A cicada buzzes somewhere nearby. You think of everything that has passed, the storm, the sickness, the cold, the muddy boots, the tiny victories. You remember the taste of salted plum and the warmth of your sister's hand in yours. You remember the sound of lanterns brushing against each other on the river, and you breathe. You're still here. The harvest will come, and with it, another set of trials. Maybe more storms. Maybe another visit from the tax collectors. Maybe famine, or maybe, just maybe, a little peace. But whatever it brings, you'll face it, because this is what it means to live the rice life. This is what it means to be woven into a land that gives and takes with equal measure. Where everything is work, but everything is also wonder. If you remember to look closely, and as the moon rises higher, casting silver shadows over the ripening fields, you close your eyes, not in fear or weariness, but in quiet, rightful place. The morning of harvest begins not with bells or celebration, but with dew, cool and thick, clinging to the tops of the rice stalks like a parting blessing from the night. You walk the narrow dikes just after sunrise, basket on your back, blade in your hand, and your breath misting faintly in the soft, gold light. Your father is already in the field, standing still among the stalks, silent, like he's listening for something. Then, without a word, he kneels, grips a bunch of rice, and cuts. The harvest has begun, you join in. The blade whispers through the stems with a satisfying hiss, the sound sharp and final. You gather each bunch carefully, tie them with straw, and lay them out to dry. The rhythm returns fast, your body remembers. Cut, bundle, lift. Cut, bundle, lift, the rice resists slightly. It's firm and full. A good sign. By mid-morning, the field is a mosaic of neat golden piles, and the sun is already pressing hard against your back. Everyone's working. Even the headman's youngest son, who normally pretends to be above mud, is out here tripping over his sandals and trying to tie a knot that won't immediately unravel. You almost smile. Almost, the mood is tired, but focused. The harvest is serious business. If it goes well, the village eats. If it doesn't, well. No one says that part out loud, you don't talk much as you work. Conversation gets swallowed up by the fields. But there are little gestures, someone handing you water, someone wiping sweat from your neck, someone laughing softly at a crow trying to steal from the drying racks. These moments pass between you like folded notes. The sun keeps rising. The piles grow higher. By midday, you break for food, just a small cloth parcel of rice balls and salted cucumber. It tastes like heaven. Not because it's special, but because you earned every grain. You sit under the shadow of a mulberry tree, legs stretched out, staring at the half-finished field with a kind of quiet pride. The wind stirs. You think about last year's harvest, how nervous you were, how unsure. This year, you know what to expect. You've seen how things fall apart. And how they get rebuilt. After lunch, you help construct the drying racks, tall, simple wooden frames strung together with rope and stubbornness. The bundled rice gets hung carefully, each sheaf positioned to catch the breeze and sun evenly. From a distance, the field looks like it's lined with golden flags. As you work, your uncle tells a story, half truth, half joke, about a harvest so large the spirits demanded extra tax. You laugh, a little too loudly. It feels good. Later that week, the tribute is measured, representatives from the domain office arrive. Their ledgers clean, their sandals cleaner. They stand at the edge of the village with their noses subtly wrinkled, trying not to show how much they hate being here. They always show up after the hard work is done. And they always want the best sheaves. The headman offers tea. They accept, but drink quickly, impatient. Each household's share is weighed, recorded, and carted off, stacked onto ox-drawn sledges that creak under the weight. The rice isn't even fully dry yet, but they don't care. You watch a month of your sweat vanish up the road in tidy bales tied with red straw. You don't say anything. No one does, but later, when no one's looking, your father grinds his heel into the dirt hard enough to split it. Once the tribute is gone, the real sorting begins. Rice for eating. Rice for storage. Rice for bartering. Rice for brewing. And always, a little hidden rice. Carefully dried and tucked away under the floorboards, wrapped in oilcloth, just in case. Everyone hides rice. Even the people who say they don't. It's not rebellion. It's survival. Your family works late into the evenings, sorting, cleaning, roasting rice husks for kindling, boiling the cracked grains into thick porridge to feed the chickens and dogs. Nothing goes to waste. One night, you're tasked with guarding the drying racks. It's not a big job, just stay awake, chase off birds, make sure the wind doesn't knock anything down. You sit on an overturned basket with a long stick in one hand and a lantern at your side. The fields stretch around you, quiet and silver under the moon. You think about that boy who wandered in during the summer. You think about your grandmother, who now sleeps more than she speaks. You think about the monk, the harvest, the rice under your nails, the sound the blade makes when it slides through a sheaf just right. You doze off once and wake with a jolt to a rat sniffing at your foot. You swing the stick. It squeaks and vanishes. The next morning, your mother finds you asleep against a drying rack, straw in your hair, mud on your chin. She doesn't scold you. She just hands you a hot cloth and says, "Come in before you catch something." After the final drying, the threshing begins. It's loud. Chaotic. Everyone takes turns beating the rice sheaves against wooden boards to separate the grain. Dust fills the air. The sun hammers down. Your arms ache after 10 minutes. There are songs for this, meant to keep the rhythm. One of the elders starts singing, voice shaky but strong. You join in, quietly. Then someone adds a drum. Then someone else claps along. The field becomes a living engine of sound and motion. Even the smallest kids find jobs, carrying straw, catching escaped grains, playing percussion with sticks on buckets. The rice is gathered into woven baskets. It's not just numbers now. It's weight. It's warmth. It's life. When all is done, the headman holds a short ceremony. A bowl of the season's first rice is offered at the shrine. No salt. No pickles. Just plain rice, clean and perfect. Everyone bows. The silence is not mournful, it's reverent. Then, quietly, the bowl is shared among the oldest villagers. A spoonful each. They chew slowly, eyes closed. No one speaks. No one has to. Your grandmother, who hasn't spoken in days, murmurs a word you don't catch. You don't ask her to repeat it. You just hold her hand. That night, there is celebration, not the loud kind, no drums, no fireworks, but joy nonetheless. The houses smell like roasted rice cakes. A neighbor brings pickled eggplant. Your cousin made sweet chestnut dumplings. Everyone shares. Everyone sits a little closer. You find yourself beside someone new, one of the blacksmith's nieces, just visiting from a coastal town. She tells you that her village harvests salt instead of rice. That her hands are always dry, cracked from the brine. You show her your muddy fingernails, your leech scars. She laughs. She says the sea tastes different every morning. You say the mud feels warmer in autumn. Somehow, that makes sense to both of you. Later, someone brings out a flute. A child dances, arms wide like a heron. Your grandmother claps. You hear her laugh, really laugh, for the first time all season. After the last cup of roasted barley tea is passed around, people begin drifting back to their homes. You walk slowly, full and tired in the best way. The moon is bright. The air smells like smoke and grain and wood. Your father places a hand on your shoulder. You did good. He says, you say nothing. Just nod. That night, you sleep deeper than you thought possible. No dreams. No worry, just sleep, and somewhere, tucked inside the walls of your house, is a hidden pouch of perfect rice. Enough to start over, if it comes to that, enough to mean hope. The days after the harvest blur into one long exhale. You wake a little later. The chores aren't gone, but they've softened, less urgency, fewer blisters. There's still rice to store, straw to braid into ropes, beans to sort, and miso crocks to check, but you move through these tasks with a different rhythm now. Less survival, more maintenance. Like the village itself is breathing slower. One afternoon, you help your mother make new straw sandals. The old ones barely held together through threshing week. She teaches you how to loop the fibers, how tight is too tight, how the heel should be firm but never rigid. It's strange, this quiet skill, one that's entirely necessary but never talked about, she tells you, without looking up, that her mother taught her the same way. And that maybe, one day, you'll teach someone too. It's not a command. Just a possibility. But you carry the thought with care. Later, you join the group weaving rice straw dolls, small figures tied from leftover husks and stalks. Some are for games. Some are for offering. One or two are burned to send messages to the gods. You give yours extra arms, just because, it's silly, but everyone laughs. The village feels closer, now, even the ones who didn't speak much before are lighter. Softer. You catch the headman humming while sweeping the temple steps. The scribe who never smiled gives your little brother a candied plum. There's something healing about shared exhaustion, about having pulled through something hard, together, and just when you think the season is done offering its lessons, your grandmother takes your hand and leads you to the edge of the field. The stalks are gone. The earth is visible again. Dark and cracked and resting. She points to a small cluster of weeds pushing up near the dike and says, "See? It never really ends. Something is always beginning." You don't answer, you just watch the weeds, stubborn and green, swaying in the breeze. Then she turns, and you walk her slowly home. The year isn't over. But something has been completed, and for the first time, you feel ready for whatever the next beginning might be. The rice is in. The fields are bare. And now, as autumn deepens, life begins to tilt inward again. The mornings arrive cold and silver. Thin frost patterns the ground like threads of cracked glass, and your breath floats in small ghosts as you carry wood to the hearth. The old stove groans when you feed it its first sticks, but soon the house fills with the dry, crackling warmth of fire. It smells like cedar, smoke, and the faint echo of last winter. Everyone starts layering again, thin wraps first, then padded jackets, then scarves hand-dyed with indigo. The colors of the village fade from green and gold to soft grays and blue-black cloth. Even the children are quieter in the cold. Their laughter feels thinner in the air, but with the cold comes clarity. You can hear things again, the crunch of leaves, the distant hammering of a blacksmith, the way the trees seem to whisper as their branches sway against each other. Summer was heavy, but autumn. Autumn is honest. Honest, and a little lonely. Your chores change with the season. You help dig daikon radishes, their pale tops peeking from the chilled earth. You hang them by the dozens under the eaves to dry into thin, shriveled threads that your mother will soak and cook all winter. Some you pickle in clay jars, spicy and sour, layered with salt and miso paste. You wash your hands in cold water so often that your skin begins to crack. You also help with making straw rope, long, twisted coils that will be used to tie firewood, bundle straw sandals, even frame simple charms for the door. It's repetitive work, but calming. There's something about the soft whisper of fiber sliding over itself that slows your thoughts. One morning, the monk returns. You're not sure if it's the same one from the summer or another entirely. They all wear the same sun-bleached robes, the same flat sandals, the same distant eyes that seem to see things beyond the village. This one sits at your fire for half an hour without saying a word. Just warming his hands, watching the flame, then he asks, "Have the winds been kind to your harvest?" You nod, he nods back. That's enough. Before leaving, he gives your grandmother a folded piece of paper with writing on it, black brushstrokes you can't read, but she smiles when she sees them. She tucks it into her sleeve and offers him roasted chestnuts in return. He walks off without looking back. You ask what he wrote. She just says, "A reminder." Of what, she doesn't say. The days grow shorter. Twilight now begins before supper. The sky turns a deep lavender, then black, and the cold settles in thick and certain. You bring the chickens in earlier. You double the straw in the bedding. Your breath hangs like fog when you go to the well. You light lanterns for every little errand. Inside, your family gathers earlier, too. The hearth becomes the center of everything. You sit around it, braiding twine, threading needles, sorting beans, telling soft stories to each other in voices barely louder than the fire. Your father mends an axe handle with slow, perfect taps. Your sister tries to read by lamplight, falling asleep with her head on your shoulder. It's peaceful. Still. Almost tender, until the tax collector returns. He arrives with a shaved head and a thick ledger, wrapped in wool, riding a tired horse that looks like it's had enough of bureaucracy. His assistant follows on foot. Eyes sharp, brush ready. They bow politely at first, but it's all paper-thin courtesy. They want numbers. They want to know how much millet your family grew. How many chickens you lost. Whether the small plot by the shrine is registered or not. You watch your father answer with calm restraint, each reply measured like rice in a cup. When they leave, your mother curses under her breath. That night, your father doesn't eat much. He stares into the fire a long time. Then, without a word, he goes out to the shed and doesn't return for hours. You find him splitting kindling in the dark. You don't say anything. Just sit down on the step and wait. Eventually, he hands you a bundle and says, "They don't take firewood." So, you carry it inside. Later that week, a neighbor loses their oldest cow. It slips on the frozen stream bed and breaks its leg. Nothing to be done. They have to butcher it on the spot. You help, though you wish you hadn't. Not because of the blood, it's not the first time you've seen blood, but because of the look on their faces. It was a good cow. Not just food. A helper. A friend. You help wrap the meat in straw and salt. Help scrape the hide. Then, at the neighbor's quiet request, you help bury the bones beneath the persimmon tree. Don't want the dogs dragging them. They say, but you both know that's not the only reason. Winter comes slow. It's already in the air, but it hasn't crossed the threshold yet. People begin preparing for Susuharai, the soot-sweeping festival, when you clean the house top to bottom to welcome the new year. You sweep corners you forgot existed. You dust the altar. You even chase out a startled frog from behind the stove, and your mother tells you that's good luck. Or at least, it used to be. She can't quite remember. Your grandmother starts wrapping up small bundles of herbs and string, charms, she says, to hang above the door. One of them is for you. For strong hands and calm sleep. You thank her. You don't tell her you haven't been sleeping well. The dreams are back, not frightening. Just odd. You dream of narrow boats floating across fields. Of birds that speak in riddles. Of rice that sings. You wake in the dark, unsure of whether the house is too quiet or too loud. One night, you find yourself on the veranda, wide awake, watching the moon cast its pale light over the frozen garden. You swear you hear someone humming. But no one else stirs. Historians still argue. You once heard a priest say, whether dreams carry the voice of the gods or just the echo of your own worries. But on nights like these, you don't want an answer, you just want to sleep again. Then, one morning, it snows, not a soft dusting, but a quiet, all-at-once blanket. The village is suddenly muffled, coated in white. The trees wear frosting. The rooftops sag gently. The world looks like it's been rewritten in powdered ink. You step outside and everything is still. No birds. No breeze. Just the sound of your own breath. You walk to the well, break the ice with a stick, and carry the water in chilled hands. Your father is already awake, sweeping snow from the path. Your sister is piling firewood indoors. You help without being asked. Inside, the fire crackles louder than usual. You hang your gloves to dry, wrap yourself in a thick shawl, and sit near your grandmother, who's feeding scraps to the dog. She doesn't say anything. She just pats your knee once, gently. The year is nearly over, and so are you, in a way, the self who feared the harvest, who tiptoed through spring, who burned their first rice porridge and cried when the rain washed away the seedlings. That self is gone. Or maybe not gone, but folded into this new shape you've grown into. Like the layers of a rice cake, soft, sweet, and firm in all the right places, the world hasn't changed much. But you'll carry this year with you, even as the snow covers its traces, because soon the new one begins, and you'll need both hands free to meet it. On New Year's Eve, the temple bell rings 33 times, one for each of the earthly temptations, or so the elder says as he lights the incense. You don't know if that's true. But the sound is deep, wooden and round, and it seems to settle into your chest like a warm stone. You help hang pine boughs above the entrance to your home. You pound steamed rice into sticky, stretchy mochi with a wooden mallet. Your arms ache from it, but your laughter does too. Your brother sneaks a bit of red bean paste when your mother isn't looking. Your father pretends not to notice. Later, you line up beside your neighbors with a bowl of ozoni, clear soup with mochi, daikon, and slivers of mushroom. The steam rises like a little offering. You blow on it gently and take your first sip as the wind stirs outside. This is it, the turning of the year. The cold won't leave right away. The sun will still be shy. And there will always be weeds, taxes, leaky roofs, and strange dreams, but tonight, just for a breath, the world feels clean. You hold that stillness in your chest like a lantern, glowing from within. The new year begins not with fanfare, but with silence. The snow lingers, pristine in some corners, crusted and gray in others. Paths are packed smooth by sandals, and every breath still curls from your lips like a question half-asked. The rice is stored, the tools are cleaned, and the fields lie asleep beneath their icy blankets, but life doesn't pause. It only shifts shape. You begin your mornings hauling water, tending the hearth, and helping your sister sort beans by hand, red from black, whole from cracked. Your fingers grow skilled at the task, moving almost without thought. Each tiny bean, a future meal. A handful of calories. A few more days of fullness when winter stretches a little longer than it should. The villagers spend more time indoors now, huddled around fires, mending nets, weaving straw, and telling stories that have no clear beginnings. Your grandmother says this is the time for the slow chores, the kinds of tasks that stretch across days and are best done while your body rests and your mind wanders. And wander it does. You think about the seasons you've survived. The work you've done. The moments you didn't think you'd endure, and yet here you are, sitting beside a fire, threading fishing line through a borrowed needle. The village shrine hosts a quiet ritual for the new year. You walk up the narrow steps early, boots crunching, sleeves pulled over your hands. You're not alone. Others have come too, some young, some old, some with infants strapped to their backs. All carrying hopes like hidden packages tucked beneath layers of wool and cotton. You bow. Clap. Offer a coin. Whisper your wish into the wind. You wish for strength. Not ease. Just the kind of strength that lasts longer than the cold. The priest, wrapped in layers of ceremonial silk and breath steam, waves a go-hey, those zigzag paper streamers, over your head. The sound is soft, like parchment breathing. You feel a sudden pang of humility. Of belonging. Then, as you're turning to leave, you see your father bow lower than usual. And you see your grandmother standing still, eyes closed. You don't ask what they wished for. Some things are meant to remain folded. On the way back, you pass the rice storehouse. Your uncle stands outside, counting crates with a furrowed brow. The roof has sagged a little, too much snow weight, and one corner of the structure has begun to lean. You help brace it with bamboo poles. He thanks you with a quiet nod, and you both stand in the cold for a while, watching your breath join the sky. Work continues. Now is the season of bartering. There is no market in your village, but people trade constantly, radish for millet. Dried fish for extra straw mats, a day's labor for a pot of miso. Your mother sends you to exchange smoked sweet potatoes for a sack of buckwheat flour. You go, clutching the bundle, walking quickly through the snow-packed lanes. the woman you trade with gives you not only the flour but also a small packet of preserved plums. You've grown, she says, ruffling your hair. That face is too serious now. You smile, a little. Seriousness is something you've earned. In the evenings, people visit each other more. Small gatherings around shared fires. Simple games, bits of song, a cup of warm sake passed between calloused hands. You listen to the men talk of taxes, of droughts from 15 winters ago. Of how one year the snow turned yellow and nobody knew why. Historians still argue, one of them says with a wink, whether it was sulfur in the wind or just bad millet liquor. They all laugh. You don't get the joke, but you laugh too. One night, your sister brings home a story. She heard it from the shrine keeper's niece, who heard it from a traveling peddler, that in a province 2 valleys over, a boy your age caught a fox spirit in a snare meant for rabbits. The fox spoke human words and promised him luck in exchange for release. The boy let it go, and now his family is rich. Do you think it's true? She asks. You shrug. Do you think we'd be rich if it were? She thinks for a moment. Maybe we'd just be less cold. You both laugh into your sleeves. That night, you dream of a fox with red eyes and gold fur, offering you a bowl of rice that never empties. When you wake, you check the traps near the edge of the woods. No fox. Just snow. And a few bird prints that vanish beneath a drift. The cold drags on. It becomes something you carry, not just in your body, but behind your eyes, in your shoulders, deep in the places that warmth can't quite reach. You stop noticing it constantly, which is somehow worse. It's just part of you now. People begin to look tired in new ways. Not just from labor, but from waiting, for thaw, for change. One of your neighbors falls ill. An old man with a voice like gravel and a laugh like falling apples. You help carry firewood to his daughter. The house smells of vinegar, rice porridge, and worry. You don't go in. You just bow and leave the wood by the door. Your grandmother tells you not to be afraid of sickness. Fear wastes time, she says. Better to wash your hands and keep the fire fed. So you do, and one night, finally, the snow softens, not much. Just a little give underfoot. A new sound in the air, dripping. A looseness in the trees. The icicles shrink. The well water feels different. A little less biting. You hear the first crow in weeks. Your sister says it means spring is coming. Your mother says it just means the crows are hungry. Your father says nothing, but he moves through the house a little faster. It's subtle, but it's happening. The turn, the beginning of the unfreezing. Soon, the village will stir. There will be thawing paths, wet fields, broken tools to mend, and dreams to chase again. The rhythm will change. But not yet. There's still time for quiet. For now, the fire is still your sun. The bean sorting still your meditation. The wind still your old companion, scratching at the shutters with cold fingers, trying to be let in. You wrap yourself tighter in your winter robe and sip broth from a wooden cup. The dog snores beside the hearth. The lamp hums with tiny flame, and across the room, your grandmother begins humming a song that you don't know but feel like you've always heard. The song your grandmother hums has no name, no beginning, no words. Just a tune that loops like falling snow or the gentle lap of waves on a winter lake. You don't ask where she learned it. You just sit there and let it wrap around you. Soft and a little crooked, like an old quilt. Outside, the wind picks up again. You step onto the veranda for a moment, cup still in hand, and breathe in the night air. It's sharp but not cruel. The moon is thin and curved like a sickle, cutting through the clouds just enough to silver the rooftops. You spot a cat walking along the ridgepole of the shed next door, silent, casual, untouchable. It pauses, blinks at you once, and keeps going. A little god in fur. You don't call to it. You just watch. From behind you, your father's voice rises, muffled by the paper screen. Did you bring in the tools? You smile. Yes, you answer. and it's true, all of them are accounted for. Cleaned, and tucked in beside the hearth like tired relatives. Even the smallest spade. Even the splintered rake you mended with a twine knot and hope. The village is sleeping now, like the rice fields and the stories and maybe even the gods. Soon the snow will finish melting. Soon you'll be ankle deep in mud again, rinsing sap from your sleeves, shooing frogs from the water channels. Soon the first green shoots will break through and life will tug you forward once more. But tonight the world is paused, between inhale and exhale. Between ice and thaw. Between ending and beginning, and in that narrow sliver of stillness, you realize something simple and vast: you belong here, in this village. In this season. In this strange, stubborn rhythm of hands and fire and soil and silence, you belong to the work and the weariness and the way people share stories in pieces, folded between spoons of soup. You belong to the rice, and the rain, and the long, hungry winter, and, maybe most of all, you belong to the spring that hasn't yet arrived, but already trusts that you'll be ready. The spring doesn't announce itself, it creeps. One day, the wind no longer hurts your face. The next, you spot a bit of moss thawing green on the north side of the well. A week later, the water in the stream flows freely again, not a trickle, but a true current, noisy and alive. And just like that, the village stirs from winter as if waking from a long nap, stiff, slow, and squinting at the light. You rise earlier now. Not because anyone tells you to, but because the air has shifted. It smells like wet earth and plum blossoms, like movement. Like work, you start the season by turning the soil. You and your father take up your spades and hoes and return to the fields, still damp. Still clinging to the last bits of frost. The first few steps are the hardest. Your boots sink into mud. Your breath fogs. Your arms aren't used to this yet, but your body remembers. Your father doesn't speak much while you work. Just a few words now and then: adjust this row, turn here, don't forget the corner. His voice is softer than in autumn. Less stern. You realize he trusts you more now. Maybe because of the winter. Maybe because you've stopped asking so many questions. Maybe because he sees something in you that you've only just started to see yourself. The plowing takes days. You're not the only ones out here. Every family has returned to their plots, and soon the entire village is bent over in long rows. All facing the earth together. The fields fill with the creak of wooden yokes, the groan of oxen, and the clack of hoes tapping stone. You share tools. You swap labor. You trade jokes as you pass each other on narrow paths. The jokes aren't especially funny, but everyone laughs harder than necessary. It's spring. You made it. Soon after, it's time for seed selection. This isn't just a matter of scooping grain from a sack. This is sacred. The seeds must be chosen carefully, sorted for size, color, weight. Your mother leads this process, with fingers so quick and practiced you sometimes forget how much she knows. She hums as she works, a different tune from your grandmother's winter lullaby, but just as steady. You join her. You learn how to test a grain's firmness with the pad of your thumb. How to spot tiny cracks that could spell failure. You don't speak much. It feels like you're part of something bigger than conversation. Later that evening, she sets a bowl of seeds aside, too small for planting, too fine to waste. For the sparrows, she says. You smile. Even the birds have a place in this plan. The seedlings are started in seed beds, protected by straw mats and woven covers that your sister helped make during winter. You water them gently, day after day, watching the first green tips emerge like shy children. There's something delicate about this part of the year, not in the sense of weakness, but of potential. Everything is leaning forward, ready but not quite moving. The energy hums under the surface. You feel it in your bones. You feel it in the way your muscles ache at night, not the heavy fatigue of harvest, but the bright soreness of becoming. One day, you overhear a traveling merchant speaking to the headman in low tones. Something about rising rice taxes. About a failed planting season 2 provinces east. About rumors of rebellion in the hills, historians still argue, he mutters. Whether that year's unrest began with weather or with hunger. You tuck that away. Just another truth to hold in your sleeve, but for now, your village is calm. The seedlings grow. The paths dry. Children run again, chasing dogs and each other with the wild joy of unsupervised spring. The first frog song arrives on a warm night. You're outside helping repair the irrigation channel when you hear it, long, low, musical. Then another joins. Then a dozen. You pause, shovel in hand, and close your eyes. It's the most beautiful noise you've heard all month. After transplanting begins, your hands rarely stop moving. You rise before the sun, eat a quick ball of cold rice, and join the others at the paddies. The seedlings are ready, pulled from their beds in tidy bundles, roots dangling, green tops swaying like little banners of hope. Your job is to plant them in rows, knee-deep in cold water, bent forward, arms working in slow, sure motion. It's hard. Monotonous. Mud sucks at your legs. Your back protests. But your fingers learn the rhythm: grab, place, press, step, over and over, like a kind of prayer. The sky is gray for most of the week. Not raining, not sunny. Just hanging there, heavy with maybe. But no one complains. You hear songs again, short chants to keep time. Funny rhymes about frogs and ghosts and stolen sandals. You hum along. You forget the cold, you forget your name, even, for a while, you are only hands. Only motion. Only the shape of the land. Your cousin falls into the water once, with a dramatic splash that makes everyone laugh so hard they cry. Even your father, who rarely smiles, chuckles behind one hand. You help your cousin up. He's grinning, soaked to the waist, covered in mud. I meant to do that, he says. You don't believe him, but it doesn't matter. The rice is in the ground. Your grandmother comes to the fields one afternoon. She doesn't work anymore, her knees wouldn't forgive her, but she brings barley tea and small pickled plums wrapped in paper. She sits on an overturned bucket, watching the work, smiling a little to herself. You're all taller this year, she says. You look down at her, and for the first time, realize how small she's become. Later, she tells you about her first planting season. How she hated the water. How she cried the first time a leech found her. How someone, she won't say who, gave her a bracelet made of woven grass to keep the spirits away. You ask what happened to it, she shrugs. The spirits found me anyway. That night, after your bath, you weave your own grass bracelet. You don't believe in spirits, but still, the planting lasts nearly 2 weeks. When it's done, the paddies look like paintings, orderly rows of green against the water's mirror. The frogs croak. The dragonflies return. The air smells like algae and earth and wet straw. You feel hollowed out. In the best way, there's a feast. Not a formal one, just shared food, laughter, warm sake, and rice balls made with the last of last year's grain. The new harvest has begun, but its promise still lies far in the future. Your family sits close. Your cousin plays a flute. Your sister falls asleep on your shoulder. Your mother looks across the room and mouths. You've done well. You nod, not trusting your voice. Later that night, walking back under the stars, your father says, "You're not a child anymore." You want to say something clever. Something meaningful, but all you can do is walk beside him in the dark, side by side, your boots squelching in the soft path. The moon is full, the paddies gleam silver, the year is only beginning again, but you're already deep in it. In the days that follow, you find yourself drifting toward the fields even when you aren't needed there, not to work. Just to watch. You stand on the narrow dikes between paddies, hands in your sleeves, listening to the frogs and the wind and the quiet rustle of new life. The rice seedlings sway in the shallow water, row upon row of tender green, trembling gently with each breeze. it's hypnotic, you can almost see them growing. Sometimes, you catch your reflection in the water, blurred by ripples, framed by mud. You look older. Not just taller or leaner, but different around the eyes. Like someone who's seen something through to the end and then come back for the beginning. The thought doesn't scare you, it steadies you. One morning, before the sun rises, your grandmother wakes you. She says nothing, just nods toward the door. You follow her barefoot, across the dew-wet ground, up a small ridge that overlooks the entire valley. From there, you watch the first light bloom across the land. The mist curls over the paddies like steam from a sacred bowl. The trees cast long shadows. The rooftops catch the dawn, glowing gold for one breathless minute before fading into gray. Your grandmother places a hand on your shoulder. No matter what happens, she says softly, the rice always starts this way. And you understand the weight of that promise. You stay there long after she returns, letting the sun warm your face, letting the wind tousle your hair, letting the moment root itself deep inside you. Another season has begun, and so have you. Summer arrives not as a single day, but as a slow heat rising from the mud. The sun climbs higher each morning. The frogs grow louder. The shirts come off. The children reappear like mushrooms after rain, hair wet, knees scraped, arms sticky with sap and mischief. And every single living thing, plants, people, insects, seems to move just a little faster than before, as if the whole world is being wound up tighter with each passing day. You, of course, are back in the fields. The rice is growing properly now. What were once tender little shoots have strengthened into sturdy green stalks, clustered together like a miniature forest. When you look across the paddy, you see something solid. Intentional. But the work hasn't lessened, it's simply changed shape. Now you must weed, not with fire or scythe, but by hand. Bent over, waist deep in warm water, fingers feeling along the base of the stalks for anything that doesn't belong. Your hands become skilled at knowing by texture alone. Rice feels different than intruders. The weeds tug back when you pull, stubborn and petty, you remove them anyway. All day, the sun steams the paddies. Dragonflies buzz low over the surface. Leeches cling to your ankles. You flick them off without flinching now. Not because you're brave, but because you don't have time to care. You drink constantly. You wrap a wet towel around your neck. Still, the sweat pours. It mixes with mud and rice husks, clinging to your skin like a second, filthier body. By midday, you feel like you've been boiled alive. Someone tells a joke about stew, everyone groans. Someone else throws a handful of mud, you all keep working. After weeding comes fertilizing, not the kind you buy. The kind you make. All those heaps of compost you helped turn last year, all the human waste carefully collected and aged, all the fish guts and plant scraps, all of it now returns to the paddies, ladled out by hand or sprinkled with straw scoops. It stinks. Of course it does. But you don't notice it anymore. Smells like next season's dinner, your uncle says with a grin, sloshing a bucket down a row. Eat enough of it and you'll grow rice yourself. You don't laugh. But you don't mind either. You're past minding, the work is constant. The fields demand everything. But slowly, day by day, the village becomes a machine. Every person knows their part. Every child has a job. The old ones supervise. The young ones carry water. The middle-aged sweat. There's little need for talking now. Just glances. A raised eyebrow. A tilt of the chin. You've learned how to read silence. How to move without instruction. How to be where you're needed. Some days you work near your father. Other days you find yourself alongside neighbors you never used to speak to. There's a strange comfort in that, this rotating cast of faces, familiar and quiet, sharing effort in the heat. One afternoon, while hauling bundles of cut straw, you stop to catch your breath beneath a tree. The air is thick. Your arms ache, and then you hear it, the soft clatter of cicadas starting their song, just a few at first. Then a wave. Then a choir, their sound is harsh, relentless, like time being shredded. But also hypnotic. Ancient. You realize that no matter how many summers you live through, this sound will always return. You close your eyes. Let it fill you. You are small. The land is large. And the noise of insects is older than both. Around this time, strange things start happening again. Someone swears they saw a white snake near the shrine. A baby is born with a birthmark shaped like a cloud. A patch of rice grows twice as fast as the rest. Without explanation, the elders shake their heads and mutter old proverbs. The children chase each other with wide eyes, pretending to be snake spirits. You watch it all from a distance, neither disbelieving nor fully invested. You've learned that the land has its own logic. Historians still argue, the scribe once said with a smirk, whether such stories were ever believed or simply needed. You think, maybe both. At night, you collapse onto your mat without ceremony. Your muscles scream. Your skin smells like earth. You can barely lift your arms, and yet you sleep better now than you ever did before, dreamless. Deep. Like a stone at the bottom of a clear pond. Then, without warning, the rains come, not a sprinkle, but a downpour. Hot, heavy water from a swollen sky, pounding rooftops and flooding paddies. The village becomes a swamp. Chickens screech. Dogs hide. Children squeal and dash through puddles with bowls on their heads like helmets. The fields overflow. Channels clog. You and half the village spend 2 straight days clearing irrigation ditches with rakes and sticks, sloshing through ankle-deep water that smells like onions and regret. Still, it has to be done. The rice can't drown. Your sister slips and twists her ankle. She's angry about it for exactly 10 minutes, then makes a boat out of a broken sandal and floats it down the ditch like a child again. You both laugh until your bellies hurt. Eventually the rain stops. Steam rises from the ground like a sigh. The frogs are ecstatic. The weeds return with vengeance, so do you. The heat builds again. The dragonflies dance. You hear that a young man from the next village collapsed in his field and didn't get up. No one says it loudly, but you all work a little slower the next day. No one wants to be the next name whispered across a fire. One morning, your mother asks you to help her check the paddies, not to weed or fertilize, just to walk the rows. To inspect. To see, you do, and for the first time, you realize what you're looking at, a world that you helped build. Row after row of tall, gleaming stalks, their leaves sharp and proud, their grain heavy with promise. This is your work, this is your inheritance. Not a bag of coins or a sword or a title, but this green cathedral of effort. This edible sculpture of sweat and patience. You walk slowly. Reverently. A little overwhelmed, your mother says, "They'll be ready soon." You nod, and in your chest, something stirs, not pride, exactly. But continuity. You're not just doing this for yourself, you're a thread. A bridge. A pair of hands in a chain of hands that reaches backward through centuries and forward into mouths not yet born. That evening, there's a small festival, just a local one. A little break before harvest. Lanterns are strung. A drum is beaten. Someone wears a fox mask and dances in the square, slipping and twirling through the crowd like a spirit who forgot they were once human. You eat grilled eggplant and cold tofu. You drink barley tea until your stomach hurts. Then, for the first time in your life, you dance, badly, joyfully. You spin until the sky blurs. Until the sweat cools on your neck. Until the cicadas fade and the night folds in like a warm hand. And when you lie down to sleep, barefoot, belly full, arms sore, heart loud, you think, this is enough, for now, this is enough. In the quiet that follows the festival, the village exhales, not with relief exactly, but with readiness. The fields are almost golden now. The rice has turned from green to a pale, sun-warmed hue that shimmers when the wind moves through it. You walk the edges of the paddies in the early morning. Your fingers brushing the tops of the stalks, and they feel like paper, dry and crisp and full of something waiting to be released. Your father sharpens the sickles, your mother checks the storage jars, you begin weaving fresh ropes from rice straw, thick and sturdy ones this time, meant to carry the heavy bundles home from the fields. Your sister helps, humming a tune you don't recognize but feel like you've heard in your dreams. One afternoon, your grandmother catches you watching the fields again. She steps beside you, quiet as always, and says, "It's almost time." Then, more softly, "Remember how you cried when we planted the first seedlings?" You nod, a little embarrassed. She chuckles. That's how we all start. The wind shifts, not dramatically. Just enough to carry the scent of ready rice, dust, and something you can't name, but feel in your chest like a memory. You close your eyes. Harvest is coming, and you are not afraid. Harvest begins at dawn, not the first dawn of autumn, not the prettiest, but the right one, when the rice whispers that it's ready. It begins with your father stepping outside before the sun has cleared the ridge and running his hands over a stalk. He rubs a grain between thumb and finger, inspects it, bites it, chews thoughtfully, and nods once. That's the sign. No announcement. No trumpet. Just a nod. Within an hour, the whole village is awake. You eat rice balls with pickled radish. You tie your sandals tighter. You sling the coiled ropes across your shoulder. Everyone moves with a quiet kind of energy, not sleepy, not frantic. Just aware. Alert. Like birds before a storm. The sickles gleam. The baskets creak. The air smells like dust and anticipation. You step into the field and begin. The first cut always feels ceremonial. Your blade slides through the stalks with a soft rasp, like a deep exhale. The bundle comes free, light in your hands but heavy with meaning. You place it carefully on the path, already slick with dew. Then again. And again, within minutes, the rhythm takes over. Swipe. Gather. Tie. Stack, swipe. Gather. Tie. Stack. Everyone finds their own pace. You and your cousin match strides. Your sister moves faster than you expected. Your mother sings while she works, a sharp little work song that keeps the rows even. Even your father hums. Just under his breath, low and steady, the field hums with motion. It doesn't take long to realize just how much rice there is. It looked manageable from the edge, but from inside, bent over, back aching, sweat already soaking your shirt, it becomes a forest. An ocean. And every single stalk must be brought down by hand, and yet, you don't mind. This is what it's all been for. Every leech, every twisted ankle, every bucket of fertilizer, every weed plucked in silence, this is the return. The proof. The answer to a year's worth of questions. 1 row becomes 2. Then 4. Then 8. By mid-morning, your arms ache, your knees are caked in mud, and your stomach growls. You pause just long enough to eat a salted plum and drink from the bamboo flask tied to your belt. The taste is bracing. The salt wakes you up, then you go again. By midday, the field is half shorn. Golden bundles are stacked like small shrines along the dikes. The air is filled with chaff and dust, and your hands are streaked with tiny cuts, each one earned and forgotten almost instantly. You look around and see the same weariness on every face. And the same determination. This is not a task you rush. After lunch, the sun hardens. The shadows shrink. The mud grows sticky. You work slower now, but with more precision. The stalks are drier toward the center of the field, and they come away cleaner. You begin to understand your sickle like a second limb, how much pressure to use, how to angle the blade for a clean cut, how to listen for the soft snap that tells you you've done it right. You stop thinking about the end, you just keep going, until suddenly. There's nothing left to cut, just trampled stubble and the faint rustle of bundles swaying in the breeze. You look up, blinking. The field is empty. You did it. someone whoops from the far end. Another throws their arms up in mock triumph. Your sister sinks to her knees with a dramatic groan and declares herself the new rice queen. Laughter rises, not raucous, but real. You join in. It's not done, of course. Now comes the carrying. You shoulder bundles 2 at a time, feeling the weight settle across your back and hips. The path from field to storehouse is narrow and uneven, and the rice makes it feel twice as long. You make the trip again and again, feet slipping on loose straw, arms trembling. By the 3rd hour, the storehouse begins to fill. Row by row, stack by stack, the bundles are sorted and tied and placed just so, angled for airflow, positioned for easy threshing later. Your uncle oversees the arrangement like a general with a very specific sense of balance. By sunset, the field is clean. The storehouse is full, and you, for lack of a better word, are destroyed. Your muscles are jelly. Your fingers are numb. Your ears are full of buzzing. Your feet feel like sacks of hot sand. But your chest is light. You did it. Your family did it. The rice is safe. Dinner that night is simple. Grilled fish, soup, barley rice mixed with a few fresh grains from the first sheaves, still warm from the sun. It's the best thing you've ever tasted. You sleep like a stone. The next day is for threshing. You gather around a wooden platform in the yard. Each bundle is untied, the heads of rice beaten against the platform or fed through a hand-cranked roller that separates grain from stalk. It's noisy. Messy. Fun, in a weirdly satisfying way. Grain flies everywhere. You chase after rogue kernels like they're gold coins. Your grandmother sits nearby, sorting the cleaned grain into baskets, humming again. The song is slower now, not sad. Just full. Like the field after harvest, she catches your eye once and nods. That night, you build the offering bundle. It's a small sheaf of the best rice, tied with red cord and placed near the altar. For the gods. For the ancestors. For the unknown, thank them, your mother says. For what? She smiles. For letting us do it again next year. And suddenly, you understand, this wasn't the end. This was the hinge. One season closes, but only to open the next. You're not done. You're just returning to the beginning, with new hands, stronger legs, clearer eyes. Later that week, you help scatter the straw. Some is woven into sandals. Some lines the chicken coop. Some is burned in slow, smoky piles to fertilize the fall vegetables. And some is packed into a straw doll. The headman leads the ritual. The doll is paraded through the village, then placed in the field to watch over the land through the winter. A guardian. A witness. You stand beside your family and watch it sway in the breeze. It looks a little like you. The days shorten again. The fields fall silent. The frogs vanish. The air tastes different, not like loss, like rest. One evening, you sit on the veranda, sipping warm tea, and hear your father speaking to a guest inside. She's grown a lot this year, he says. Stronger. Quieter. The fields shaped her. You don't say anything, you just smile into the steam. The seasons have shaped you. And you're ready for the next one. A few days after the last grain is stored, a light rain returns. Not the heavy summer storms, but a soft, whispering drizzle that beads on leaves and dampens the roof just enough to make the world feel quiet again. You don't go outside. You don't have to. For the first time in months, your work is not urgent. It still exists, of course it does, but it moves slower now, like a story being told at half volume. You sit beside the hearth with your sister and help her mend an old blanket. She's humming again. You've stopped asking where the tunes come from. They seem to rise naturally from the smoke and steam and soft hours between seasons. You thread the needle. You knot the edge. You pass it back, and in the silence that follows, your sister says, "Do you think next year will be harder?" You think for a moment. Then shrug, "Maybe. But we'll be stronger, too." She nods. That's all. Then returns to stitching. Outside, the straw doll stands in the empty field, arms out, watching the mist roll in like a curtain. The stage is ready to go dark, but you know, behind it, the next act has already begun, and now. The season sleeps. The harvest is done. The fields are still. The sky stretches wide and pale above the quiet village, where smoke drifts lazily from chimneys and footpaths grow soft with fallen leaves. Inside, the tools are cleaned and stored. The rice is sorted and shelved. The straw sandals rest by the door. And you. You are here. Wrapped in warmth. Breathing slowly. Listening, there's no more urgency. No more aching limbs or sweat-drenched shirts. Just the gentle ache of a job well finished. A year folded neatly behind you, like a worn garment set carefully on a shelf. You hear the kettle begin to hum. You smell miso and earth and the faintest trace of wood smoke. A dog sighs in its sleep. Somewhere nearby. A shutter creaks in the breeze. Everything is quiet, but not empty. Full, in a different way now, and in this stillness, you understand something simple: life doesn't stop between the seasons. It exhales, it gathers itself, it dreams, so you rest. You close your eyes. You let the rhythm of the year settle into your chest like a lullaby. You are not lost. You are not late. You are exactly where you need to be, right here, at the end of something good, and the beginning of something quiet. Sweet dreams.